I'm tired of playing my favorite tabletop RPGs as one of the old boring races. I don't want those generic, store-brand backstories. I want to roll a character with a bit more character. Well, Roll for Combat is here to help with their incredible new book, Battle Zoo Ancestries Classic Creatures, which gives you the power to create the character of your dreams. Dig into 12 unique playable monster races in this beautifully printed, massive, hard-cover book filled with in-depth descriptions, abilities, lore, and more. Send that dusty old dwarf right back to the mines and live out your isekai fantasy by becoming an actual intelligent weapon that you wield yourself. Or you could let a friend grab you instead. Teamwork. Put that elf back on the shelf and become a sentient dungeon, complete with traps, treasures, and a living avatar. You could even put an end to the age of man and become a shape-shifting mimic. You know, those things that gave you trust issues ever since you were eaten by one in Dark Souls? Ooh, that could be you. Click the link below or head on over to battlezoo.com to secure your copy of Battle Zoo Ancestries Classic Creatures today and become the life of your adventuring party.
Hello.
Hey.
Look who's here. We brought back everyone's favorite. Everyone loved her. It's Val. Yay. So my wife's name is Val too, by the way. So
it's the best name ever.
It is the best name
You could do
ever.
a Val show, Steven, where you just have all the Vals on the show.
I know a couple of Valeries. It's Valerie though, right? And you just go by Val? Or is it
I'm not a Valerie.
Oh, you're not a Valerie. You're just a Val?
I'm a Valentine.
Oh, that's even cooler.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you're French, so obviously you probably wouldn't have an English name, so that makes sense.
Well, Valerie is really common here as well.
Oh, really?
But my parents were like, oh, yeah, no, Valentine's Day, the child of love. So
that's
really
so
cute.
nice. Wow. Good job, parents.
Good job, parents. I will tell them. I will relay the message.
All right. Well, yes, my wife is Valerie, but she goes by Val. So
All the Vals. And Valeros, who also goes by Val, is the iconic fighter in Pathfinder 2.
Valeros. So it's very popular. We have.
So do we have any
names.
mini topics today, Steven?
No,
Or just
we're
going to
let people. We're gonna relax after last week's Insanity. Because before we get into it, the first thing we have to do is follow up with Val's movie showcase. Dun, 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 dun.
Wait, that is a mini topic.
Oh, no.
Oh no! Look at what I did. You see, if I move my hands, it has this thing where it thinks I'm like trying to move the camera. So you see what it did? It moves. It has this hand gesture thing because the camera is so advanced. I know. I gotta fix that. I gotta move the camera.
That's hilarious.
I know, it's actually weird. I put up my hands and it's like, oh, do you want me to move the camera? There we go. So Val, last I left
we
off.
don't see the puppy.
Did you see the puppy? Did you see my dog?
There was a puppy, wasn't there?
Yeah. There's two dogs in here. There's two my doggies in here. Last we left off, I gave you 25,000 movies to see. Of those 25,000 movies,
one.
You saw one. All right, good job.
I saw one, but hey, okay, I had lots of stuff to do at work. Okay, it's been.
But now you're off for 2 weeks, so I wanna see some more.
I'm off for 2 weeks, so I'm going to see some more during the holidays.
So what movie did you see?
For sure, I've seen Clue.
Clue, which is funny just because I just saw it the other day again. It was on TV. What did you think?
It's honestly awesome. I was laughing the entire time. I've seen it in 2 times actually, because I didn't have time to watch it in one sitting. So I did something really sacrilegious, which is I watched 45 minutes. Then I stopped and I came back to it.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. But I feel like I should have watched it in one time because I would have made the connections a lot easier. Rather than watching the resolution and be like, wait, what was that about again? But I mean, it is what it is. But it was really fun though. Really, really fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's Clue. Clue is a fun movie, and it's actually an actual mystery and caper. It actually has some elements of that, and but it's a comedy. It's got all the great actors. They got the board game in there pretty good. It's just a fun, silly movie. And of course, anything with Tim Curry is fantastic.
Anything with Tim Curry, and I mean, it's just like, it's honestly just really funny. It's really funny. I didn't expect it to be like full on like comedy to this point. I mean, yeah, kind of. I mean, I'd seen the trailer before. I had like seen even a few scenes, but like seeing the whole thing is just, it's almost like more comedy than it is mystery. Even though the mystery is like tight enough that I'm like, yeah, I couldn't have figured that out. It may have helped if I hadn't seen it in like 2 times separate, but still, maybe I wouldn't have figured it out.
Well, you can't. That's the thing. You can't really figure like movies. Nah. You can never really figure out movies, and more importantly, you have an unreliable narrator, which is the camera. And
but you can't figure out Knives Out though. I was really proud of myself by figuring out Knives Out before the resolution, and now I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna make it. I'm just gonna enjoy the jokes. That's it.
Well, it's so a good example of this. Did you see Wednesday on Netflix? Did you see Wednesday?
I did.
Oh, you saw Wednesday.
When
Okay.
It came out.
Yes. So I loved Wednesday. I thought it was really, really, really well done. And talk about unreliable narrator is that, like, I'm watching the movie. I mean, this is a good thing, and then they are very obvious in retrospect of like what you think is going to happen. And I was all like, oh, I know what's going to happen. It's so obvious. And then 2/3 into the TV show, they how do I say without spoiling it? Everything you think is going to happen makes it impossible to happen. Oh, the camera's moving again. Look, you see? Whenever I do that, come on, camera.
Hello,
move.
Puppies.
She's right here. She's right next to me.
Oh wait.
Oh wait, can it go down? Go down. How do I make the camera go down? But so you go through it and you're like, oh, I know what's going to happen. But that's only because they set it up so that you think you know what was going to happen, and then it doesn't happen, and then you're like, okay. I mean, I made it good because I completely didn't know how the ending was going to occur, but because of the way they told the story, they purposely made you think it was going to happen one way as opposed to another. So.
Big old red herrings.
Yeah. It's not even that. So someone had a super chat saying your corkboard made a background cameo.
I have corkboards everywhere. This is not the only corkboard. This is the biggest one and the prettiest one. But I have like 4 corkboards at this point. Yeah. They're not all in use. Like I have one right here that currently isn't.
Oh.
It's empty right now.
Do you put like red string and like connect everything so that you look like insane?
I do.
So when the cops come, they're like,
I always feel like I have to justify it when people come over. Like the other day I had someone take a look at my like heating system and coming in to see this. Then I have to justify myself and try to explain that I'm not a crazy person. It seldom works.
Well, you can still be a crazy person.
I mean, yeah. But it's not the only corkboard. But I appreciate when the corkboard gets noticed. I like this corkboard a lot.
And then Curiosities, you have those too. I see like butterflies in the background.
Yes, I have. You can't see it, but I have a taxidermy snake right behind my chair as well.
You have a snake? Oh, I see the snake.
It's a new edition. Yeah.
See, butterflies. Whenever I see butterflies, I always think of like Silence of the Lambs, and that always makes like weird stuff. Always weirdness with butterflies. So you saw that one. Well, next up is Murder by Death. Murder by Death, I would say, is Clue if it was made in the 70s, because that's what Murder by Death is. Because it's very similar. It has all these famous actors. It has Truman Capote, one of the few roles he did, and he is. It's like you think as weird as he is when you see him, it's like, wow, he really was as weird as I thought he was. It has Alec Guinness in it. I mean, Obi-Wan himself, Peter Falk, Peter Sellers, James Coco, Truman Capote. It's got this like all-star cast. Maggie Smith. You probably don't know who most of these people are, but I
know Maggie Smith.
Okay, well, Maggie Smith, yeah, she's still around. But, it's
remember Stephen Val is a film major. So.
That's right.
I'm a film major, but I'm more, how to say, I have a very big gaps in my film knowledge, so
Got it.
I will take anything.
And the person who did the movie poster was the artist from the Addams Family, the original Addams Family. So very classic poster too. Anyhow, watch that one. It's very similar. You're gonna be like, oh yeah, I kind of see it.
I was really hyped to watch that one. I thought it was going to be the first one that I watched. It ended up being Clue, I think, just because it was not an adventurous
Easier
night.
to
I was like,
find.
I'll watch this. But yeah, it's going to be the next one I watch. I promise.
So I guess now we can start on
Okay.
news.
Let's do it. This one is a pretty interesting topic. I'm curious what you will say about this.
Well, we're going to do little news. So first,
We do have mini topics. You said we didn't have
No,
them
I
when
said
asked at the
I said
beginning.
we have many topics. We're going to do mini topics after we talk to Val a little,
Oh, okay.
because I wanted to see what movies she watched.
That's its own mini topic.
That was a mini topic. So the next mini topic is there was a big release today. Battle Zoo Eldamon finally came out, right, Mark? PDF.
Yeah. That's huge. This has been years in the making, almost an entire year of playtesting, and it's finally here. It's a brand new magic system, over 300 powers, which is more than the SRD spells from 5e Player's Handbook, and almost as many as the normal spells in Pathfinder 2 Core Rulebook and Player Core 1, but not quite.
And Mark wrote the whole damn thing.
Grady Wang wrote a few of the sidebars and headers for some of the Eldamon, but
You wrote 99% of the
correct.
What?
Yes, it's almost 300 pages.
book. For Pathfinder and 5e, I actually rewrote, I don't know if you noticed that, I did rewrite the Eldadexes. I rewrote about
Paul
80
Hughes and William Fisher did work on the 5e one
Yes.
for conversion as well.
and I rewrote a lot of the Eldadex entries just because I felt like they were written so long ago. I felt like we had a lot more information, so I expanded upon some of the details in some of those. But that's it.
I actually didn't notice that.
Oh, you didn't even notice it. That's how well I did. It's like
There you go.
Yeah, I rewrote about 85% of them. I rewrote the entries, mostly because I just felt like we had more information, and now I had the stat block, so I can add in some more powers in their descriptions. But other than that, I'm tired.
Before the stream started, I was saying that I don't think you guys sleep. I maintain that statement.
Well,
I don't think you
I
sleep.
said it before. This is our 8th book that we put out just this year, and we're putting out 2 more on Friday, so we'll have 10 books
I think
out.
we're probably going to wind up with 40 this year. We had over 30
No,
last year.
we're gonna have like 50 this year.
Maybe almost 50. But the thing is that we have complementary superpowers, because Steven's
we're
superpowers,
insane too, by the way.
Steven never sleeps and he never stops.
And never
And
stop.
he's pretty fast.
And I'm fast.
I'm
I like when
extremely
you say
fast.
I'm pretty fast. You see, that's like saying it's like the Flash versus Superman. Like
Yes. Okay.
you, I'm
That's
the
fair.
Flash. You're Superman. The Flash, Superman can go across the galaxy in 12 seconds. By the way, I don't know if you know that. So according to the lore, so you're Superman. I'm Flash. Flash can only go so fast to actually make time go backwards, but you could actually break the laws of
Yeah, I mean, that's
everything.
fair. Steven is quite fast and never stops,
Yes.
whereas I stop sometimes, though maybe not as often as I should stop. Like, I'm only at the point where it's like, maybe I'm doing too much, not at the, does this person ever sleep ever? But I'm also even faster than that. So when we combine those two, we just do way too much.
We do a lot.
Again, what kind of what entity do I have to pray to acquire such power?
That's a good question.
Wow.
I think that we all have our own superpowers, and they're all different. So,
Do
like,
you take warlock patrons?
No, I take my classes.
I'll take warlocks. Yeah, if you make the right pact.
Okay, we'll draft a contract right
But
after
not
this.
the Pact of the Blade. There's just been too many of those Hexblade warlocks, so you have to take a different pact with me.
Tom?
Tome is good. Tome is good.
So the so if you want to get Eldamon, the PDFs, and this is rare, although we're getting better at it, is that both the 5e and the Pathfinder versions came out at the same time. Now we do that with Year of Monsters and Year of Legends all the time, but never with a really big book. Not with a.
It's because we only put things out at the same time if they've been delayed for a monthly release. Basically, actually, that's it. Because otherwise, we give things to you the moment they're done, and by necessity of our workflow, the PF2 will nearly always be done before the 5e and before the Foundry module, because you need one to start the others. But in this case, because one piece of art took so long to come in, they were done at the same time.
Yes, that's actually exactly right. The the Pathfinder version would have come out earlier if it wasn't for the artwork being delayed.
Very slightly, but yeah.
Yeah, but it worked out.
Yep. Okay. Do we have another mini topic?
Yeah, we got tons of mini topics.
Okay. Well, it has been a little while since we did mini topics because last week we didn't have them. So I guess there's a bunch.
Let's see. There's a whole bunch. So everyone, I almost did a video on this, but I didn't. But I probably will. I don't know. I got a lot of people writing me, and I mean a lot of people over the weekend, because D&D is no longer going to be in Portuguese.
Yeah, I saw that.
It gets better. It gets better. So here's the crazy part. D&D WoTC announced on Friday that D&D will no longer release their hardcover products, or some of their products. It's a little unknown exactly which products are not going to be. They're not going to be doing in Portuguese. But on Friday, do you know what Friday was? Was it Brazil, or was
it a major holiday?
It was RPG Day in Brazil, because Brazil loves role-playing games so much that
Brazil has one of the biggest role-playing game conventions in the world. It has amazing fans of role-playing games and many fans of role-playing games.
Yeah, they actually have it. They have a day, a yearly day, and that was the day WoTC announced.
That was kind of hilarious that they announced it on exactly that day.
And can you, WoTC, are you doing this on purpose? I mean, come on, really?
So Brazil was like, we appreciate tabletop RPGs that day, and then that day.
Yes.
That is so sad.
It is sad. But,
I feel bad because I know how passionate fans are in Brazil, and when I was at Paizo, we had a lot of translators, and pretty much all of them were great. They would have insightful questions. They would have good translations. But the Portuguese translators were by far the most enthusiastic, at least as far as I could tell. I was not the person who dealt with them directly, so maybe the licensing people got a different impression. But my impression was that Portuguese translators for Brazil were super, super enthusiastic and into it. And that was really cool to see.
Yeah, so it's not that it's a non-story. I think it's a very big story, especially for everyone who speaks Portuguese and loves role-playing games. It's just that it's not unexpected, because they said that there's just not enough sales to do it. It's amazing. They're in English, French, German, Italian, Japanese, and Spanish. But I expect that this is not going to be in any other language. The books are going to be in English only in a few more years, because the expense of doing these books and the ease of doing this online and translating, whether it's through Google Translate or through language files, is very easy. That they are just like, look, it's so much work to do this. And then not only do you have to redo the translations, then you got to lay it out, then you got to print it, then you got to ship it, then you got to set. I mean, it's so much work.
Right.
Or you put it online, and
I understand.
It's just so much easier. Yeah.
I was even going to bring this up in the main topic if we didn't have it as a mini topic, because there's multiple factors that, as far as I can see, it's tragic for the players in Brazil. But one of them I know, because I have Brazilian fans who talk to me about it, is that the exchange rate compared to how much money you make in Brazil is really bad. So everything is very expensive. So I'm guessing that may have hurt sales of the hardcover products for them. And then you were saying shipping. From what I understand, shipping can be difficult, especially across the land in Brazil. You kind of have to, it's easier to like go on the ocean to get to another part because there's enough jungles and other things. And that may have changed since the person from Brazil who was telling me about it told me about it, since the prices were recent, but that conversation I had was a few years ago. But add those together, I can see where they would have logistical issues, but it's just, it's really, really sad for
Is it
Brazilian
also
players.
like not just the shipping, but also the is there like a tax or some kind of like customs thing on it? Because I know that at least in France, the price of D&D books is huge in France as opposed to what you can find in the US for the same book. And I'm actually trying to like look up the prices right now on like just to do like player's handbook just for the sake of it. But we're at like 50 euros in France, and at like how much is it in the US? Like 30?
It's well, if you get it at Amazon, you can get it for like 25,
oh well.
30.
So if you buy it from WoTC, like the Bigby's Giant book, then that's 224 pages for $70. And now Amazon obviously sells things for less. It's got like 33 because it's Amazon. But
so
if
it's the
you buy
like
it direct
Amazon
from WoTC,
that is
it's
making
70.
the big difference. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
it's Amazon just always being wild
Just
like they are.
overtaking all of that, and
Amazon sells books at a loss so that everyone will go into their marketplace and then they can make money by getting like third-party people to pay for getting to be in their search algorithms and being promoted and other things like that. It's a very interesting thing, but it can be frustrating for people who do direct sales when Amazon just will take your suggested price and then cut it in less than half.
I'm hearing more and more about game shops closing as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, what I was going to say, there's no tax on game books when you import them into Brazil, because they're considered educational items, which is actually kind of a big deal. So that's a big part. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be happening worldwide. Is that it's so much easier. I mean, it's like it is leagues, not even leagues. It is light years easier to do multi-language support online than on any printed material. And maybe that's why I didn't report on it, because I felt terrible, and I think it's, very important, but I'm not even surprised, and I'm not even going to be surprised when they drop support in every other language. They're just going to do it. I mean, it's just, it makes sense, and they're hurting for money. But do you buy your products in French, Val, or
I buy them in English,
you
but
buy them in English?
I think
okay.
I think I'm the odd one out here, just because I only play in English because I was in the US for so long. But I think most people that I know who play here would buy in French. It's actually a bit harder finding in English, but not excessively hard either.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
we have some Brazilian fans in chat who have confirmed what I heard from another Brazilian fan about the prices. They said that the D&D Player's Handbook would cost around 300 Brazilian real, and the minimum wage monthly is 1,320 monthly.
Yeah.
So just think about how much that Player's Handbook is compared to your entire monthly amount. And they said in chat, you play or you eat.
So here's the thing, and I'm gonna give it the upside. There is a good side. Are you ready, Brazilian?
There's a
people?
good side?
There is.
What's the good side?
There is a good side. So what they do, any digital only products such as Netflix or Amazon Prime and stuff, they set the prices based on local economy, not because it's digital only. So they can set the price to whatever they want, because the price is almost nothing when it's digital only. So if WoTC is smart and does what I expect they're going to do, is that they can have the digital products come out in Brazil for in Portuguese, and actually have it priced significantly lower than it would be if it's a printed book. And they will actually be able to get it to more people. And that is the correct way to do it. And
possible. That might even make them more money by selling it to more people.
Yes. So that's why I looked at this. I said, there's actually a bright side to this, because Netflix really invented this model because they were the first like digital only platform of such scale. And they would price, actually, their pricing model is very complex, but they basically do a combination of whatever it costs. So the cost that it's just annoying enough for you not to pirate it. Like if it costs $10, if it's $10, you're like, forget it, I'm going to pirate it if it's $10 a month. But if it's $8 a month, they're like, oh, I'll pay $8 a month. It's easier for me to pay $8 a month in private than to get everything pirated. And that's how they did it. But the prices are very different. Like Netflix could be $20 a month in the US and $3 a month, somewhere else, and $15 in Japan. It's not the same price. And if they do it the right way, is that they will price this accordingly on the markets and put out the products. And to them, it's basically, I wouldn't say free money, but it's going to allow them to make way, way more in the long run. And they can then do this in every market worldwide and have the books out in all those languages. And it's really pretty easy to do comparatively. So there is a lot of upside to this. Like everyone's talking about the digital only model and how terrible it is. And they're talking about, you have all these issues like, add-ons and DLC pricing and all this. I'm like, yeah, but there's also a lot of good things. And this is one of them.
It does make the hobby a lot more accessible, because this is not, it's not necessarily a very accessible hobby to get into.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's quite expensive. And I kind of always worry about just how many people are not daring to launch themselves into the hobby because of that.
Yeah. So there is an upside, and
no, that's fair. That's fair. If they can cut it down to 50 real, 30 real, exactly. That's going to make it a lot more affordable for the player's handbook. That's going to be way more affordable than 300.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
I barely own any books. I mostly do PDFs these days. It's just it's so much more accessible.
Realistically, the price of paper has been in the biggest shortage ever. Pricing of paper is skyrocketing. I mean, everything is skyrocketing, and it really is coming down to the point that books are going to become physical books are going to become collector's items. They really are. And the bad news is that everyone's like, oh, but I love my books. I'm like, well, they're not going away. They're just going to be more expensive and more difficult to find.
But it does feel more and more like a luxury.
Yeah, it's going to feel more and more like a luxury because the pricing is getting more and more expensive. And, you can do the same thing online. And also, especially a game like this, so many people play it online that it's better, well, in my opinion, because this is what we do, it's better to spend a lot of your time and effort onto online tools and functionality to allow people to play your specific game online than to come out with a book. And I know it's horrible to say, but that's realistic, which kind of ties into the topic later that we'll talk about. But, we were the first or one of the very first people. Actually, we were the very first third-party person ever to work directly with Foundry, ever. And Foundry is huge now. And now everyone works with Foundry. And we were the first one because it was a unique thing. And because that's the writing on the wall, man. It's everyone's going online. And yeah, it's great to play in person. I can't even think of the last time I played a game in person. I mean, at Gen Con, that was it. I mean, I just don't play games in person. Mark can think of the last time we played in person last week. But
yep. But you didn't technically play it. You watched it, but you had a lot of fun watching it too.
Right, I did. But you know what I mean. It's just so much easier. So, and that's just the way everything's going. Anyhow,
playing in person on Saturday, it will have been the first time for 2 years, I think.
Really? So you're having your first in 2 years where you're meeting in person, see? And that's just realistic. So would you rather have books in front of you or digital tools to help you when you're playing online. To have like all the monsters in, to have all the maps in, to have all the characters in, so everyone can manage their own characters whenever they want.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely digital tools. I mean, it's especially the way it's going, where it's not just like PDFs, but also interactive stuff, right? I mean, it's just 1,000 times more convenient. And I know it's not like going to be for everyone, right? It did take me some time to transition to it because I was very used to annotating my books, like just like having a bunch of sticky notes everywhere and just really having it all there, just like all prepped. I'm a very heavy prepper. I'm getting better.
Do you have corkboards worth?
I was going to ask the same question.
You have what?
You have a corkboard with all your prep and notes.
Not for as a GM or as a player. However, the reason I have corkboards is because it helps me write adventures. So this is a mini campaign that I need to properly finish.
We're kind of making fun of you a little because we're like, of course you prep.
You can make fun of me. I get that the whole corkboard thing is not necessarily common, but it does make sense. I feel it does make sense when trying to like come up with ideas. I'm a very visual person, which I think is the reason why it took some time to transition out of books and into PDFs. Yeah, also because I just like owning stuff. It's great.
I have sticky notes all over my desk, so it's the same.
See, that's perfect. Sticky notes everywhere. It's awesome. It's perfect to be annotating all of this. But I feel like now we can still like make it work with just like PDFs and like digital tools, and the more it goes, the easier it is to do it.
I've shown this before. I print out all my PDFs, and then it's hard to see here, but I have extensive notes, and like I write in red. Hold on, I'll show. There's like a page here. One of my pages is like extensive notes. Is like, so I'll do like extensive notes, in red, of like everything that I need to do. And the best thing is because I still have the book and the PDF, and then when I'm done with these, I throw them away. So this way I can write all over them and not have to worry about it. And then I can write right on it, right on the stat blocks. So that's what I've been doing that for like 15 years, something like that.
That's a nice system. I kind of just like have my my little like notebook next to me and just like jot down stuff on there. I don't own a printer, but it's I mean, if you can easily transition from digital to printed, but not the other way around. So
it was like, you print out all your PDFs. Do you print out your emails too? Yes, I do. How'd you know? I actually have 4 printers in my house. How about that?
Wait, really?
Yes.
Okay. Wait, you print out your wait.
I don't print out my emails. I'm kidding. No, what I do is I print out.
Gotcha.
So these are adventures. So I run adventure paths, and so what I do is I'll print out like, so this is the map, and then I'll make notes all over the map. And then I print out, so these are chapters. So I print out a chapter at a time, and then I also print out the monster stat blocks separately. And so I'll have everything. So I'll usually have 3 sections. I'll have a map, I'll have the adventure, and then I'll have like stat blocks. And then between the 3 of them, and then when I'm done, here's the best part. I'm like, I'm done with that stat block, throw it away. And then when I'm done with it, so I only print out a chapter at a time. I don't print out the whole PDF.
Oh, okay, wait. Okay, one thing that is really cool though. Okay, because I currently don't have a printer, but there was a time where I was running games for a community center, and there I had access to a printer, and I was running games like super often. So printing is great, so you can like write on the stat block, but even better is printing and then laminating, so that you can reuse the stat block again and again without having to reprint it, and just use like a dry erase marker and like write on it.
Oh, well, I'm a DM, so I don't care about that. But I see what you're going at. I print out a lot.
Yeah.
And also I
was doing that with maps as well. Like if I was going to use a map several times with like different groups, I would just like print out the map in like scale, and then just laminate the whole thing. So then just take out the map and be able to use dry erase markers on it. It's amazing. It's so convenient.
You know why I started to do it, Mark, is that I was running the Age of Worms from Dungeon Magazine. And Dungeon Magazine, so I was originally running adventures from a magazine, and it was very hard to run adventures from a magazine. So how about this? How about this for geeky? Are you ready, Mof? I used to take my dungeon magazine, scan it,
I was about to ask if you were scanning
and
it.
then
Okay.
print it. And that's how geeky I was.
That's nice.
And then I would write, because I didn't want to mess up my magazines. And thank God I did it, because Dungeon's gone, and like good luck finding it. So I would do
I have a
that.
very European tip for you if you want to play right out of your magazine.
What's that?
With the small size of it, rolling like cigarette filters make great like tokens to put on the map. That's what we used to do.
Oh, so
Yeah.
I actually
Like, we
So
just
what?
use like cigarette filters like to use as like pawns or tokens.
Yeah, what I have is I bought it at Gen Con. I'll get it. You guys talk, I'll show you what I have. Oh, this is turning into a very different segment.
I don't want to bring my stuff as well and show stuff.
Okay, why don't you both go and
Should
show
we
off
just
your
do that?
do-it-yourself
Okay, let's just show first.
pieces, and
See?
I could go get my stuff from the demo, the Eldamon, if I wanted to, but I won't, because then nobody is going to be here. Everyone's going to be like, "Where did everyone go?" I made some note
I
cards
just got the entire
there's Val.
I'm not that far away.
super fast. I would have to go like multiple rooms away and then open a
I have a
box. So I'm
small
not gonna do it.
apartment.
Linda and I used to, and we don't actually have a house yet, so we're staying with my parents for
Alright.
now, and there's a
Watch
couple
this.
rooms to go
You ready,
through.
people? You ready, party people? Do this. Inside of this, and you can buy these at Gen Con. These are 2-inch discs, and then this is a bag of 1-inch discs. So these are just discs. And then I have glue sticks, and then check this out. I have this little buddy here. This will punch perfect circles. I'll
Oh,
show you. Like, you just do this, and then you go, boop, and then
And you can have your token like that.
yeah, look, it comes out perfectly.
That is great.
that's
So
cool.
good.
Look at that.
Here's another tip for
Got this at Gen Con.
if you need
This
something
thing is
that's
great.
flying above another piece, and you have one of those pizza boxes with the circular separator in the middle that's
the little
elevated,
table.
it's just about the right height that you can fit a mini under it. So if you put your upper mini on top of the pizza separator, you can put your lower mini underneath the pizza separator, and it'll fit most cases.
See, look at that. So
I
this,
feel
and I
like
just,
my method is way too much
I just
effort.
glue this on. I actually have glue sticks, and then I just make these.
So good.
And get this.
Where do you find those discs, you said?
I'll show you in a second. And look, these are my templates for spell effects.
Oh yeah,
Oh.
area of effect.
Area effect. Here's the big one, the big fireball that you got to put together. So this is why I used to use these all the time when I played in person. Now I only break these out for the cons. But no, so you can get these tokens. You can get these on Etsy and stuff. But at Gen Con, there's a lot of people who sell these, and this is like a bag. This bag was huge. It was like 1,000 tokens for like $10, and they're just wood.
Oh.
I've had this bag for 20 years, and I'm still not. I'm almost through it. And then they also sell. These are the larger ones. These are the 2-inch ones, and they sell 3-inch and 4-inch. What I do is, and here's a secret: if it's a 3-inch or a 4-incher, I just take it and I glue it on the 2-incher. And then I just move it around the board, because you don't really need it to be that big. So.
I have like those, like they're, I mean, essentially the same thing, right? Just like I have different sizes of them, and you just like slip a thing in. Again, I no longer really play in person, but they're nice, they're convenient. But that, just being able to print them, punch a hole, that's so nice. That's so
this
convenient.
this is the best thing. Look at this, and it all goes in there. So it's like, remember those hole punches you had when you were in school? And it's like, oh, you just go here and you punch out everything you need. And you know what you use? You use like magic cards. That's what's really good for this.
Yes,
and then ta-da, you got all the little punch outs.
I need this. I'm going to start playing in person again just so I can have fun with this.
Yeah, this is fun. Like, I like doing it once in a while. I do like to do when I go to Gen Con. When I used to run a weekly game, let me tell you, this used to get a little annoying. It's like I'd be there like punching out an Age of Worms, because Age of Worms has 1,000 enemies, and so it'd be like, punching out constantly, and it's like these huge battle maps. So it was a lot, but that's what I do. Wow, this became a very different. So you see, Val, you were worried. You did have nothing to talk about on this.
Yeah, I'm not worried anymore. Now I'm like, it's okay. I'll be the like audience surrogate. I'll be the one asking questions because I have no idea what's going on. But now you're going to make me make investments. I'm gonna pay things.
Yeah,
because this is really cool.
There's actually a few more fun news segments.
Okay.
There's
actually fun news.
A fun news. Here's a fun news segment. On Humble Bundle, Paranoia has its 25th anniversary, and you could buy every single Paranoia book for like $18.
Oh wow.
And,
Friend computer.
So why don't you explain, since you're not talking as much, Mark, because I won't shut up. Why don't you explain to people what Paranoia is?
Okay, so Paranoia is you hear about the 25th anniversary. It is a 25-year-old game where basically it's a dystopian sci-fi game where this evil computer is ruling over a complex. Now it's your friend. It's your friend computer. Never say it's an evil computer. You'll be executed.
Friend computer.
And so the GM plays the friendly computer, and everybody has access levels based on the colors of the rainbow, where red or even infrared is the lowest, and violet and even ultraviolet are the highest. And basically you play as like the team leader or the loyalty officer or some other position, and in a dystopian 1984 like style, you rat each other out for being mutants or traitors and execute each other, and tend to bumble on a very simple mission due to inter-party difficulties due to living in a dystopian society. And you have multiple clones because the amount that you're going to kill yourself is so high, you need to have multiple clones so that you can come back a certain number of times.
Yes.
That is my best description of Paranoia.
The more accurate description of Paranoia is one of those books, one of those games. I don't know how much fun it is to actually play. I played it a little bit when it first came out, but it is awfully fun to read. It's actually probably more fun to read than to play, because this was one of the very first role-playing books that was really silly and goofy, and they also had, like, for example, like if you look at it, like right in the beginning, I'm looking at one of them here, extreme paranoia, security clearance, ultraviolet warning. Like there's a big label across it saying like you're not even allowed to look at this book. So it was one of the first times that they really went full in with the lore and the feel of the world in the rule book itself. And before that, in the 70s and 80s, these rule books were extremely clinical. They were like reading, instruction manuals to like use your engine. I mean, they're very matter of fact. And this was written in a very humorous, fun, goofy way. And it's really, it's just fun. It's just a really fun piece.
It's good for a one-shot. It's probably not great for an ongoing campaign. Also, $18 for 32 Paranoia books is pretty good. But if you're not sure and you're like, I don't know, I might love this or not, $1 gets you 3 Paranoia books, including the main book, the little red book. So, like, yeah, that's a pretty funny humble bundle.
That's it. Just $1.
I've been meaning to play that for so long, but I feel like it's the kind of game where I really need to have like someone who's like run it before, and I don't feel like I don't feel up to the task of it just feels like, how to say,
that's a lot.
I just don't trust myself with it. I've been meaning to play that for so long. It sounds so good. I think I was introduced to it when someone told me about a game called Everyone is John, which also sounds really fun. But I keep hearing this thing of like, oh, it reminds me of Paranoia, and I was like, okay, I need to look up what this Paranoia game is, and I need to play this.
Yeah, I played it once or twice but that was way back in like 86 or something, or 88, whenever it first came. See, this is the 25th anniversary, but it's been out longer than 25 years. I mean, it came out
that's
in
a
the
good
80s.
point, right?
Yeah, it's been out since
Because
the
it
80s.
said 25th anniversary, but I felt like it's older than that.
Oh, it's definitely, because
I feel like it's older than me.
It is. It came out in the 80s. I was playing it in high school. So, and at the time, it was a huge deal because this was like the first goofy science fiction. You know, everything was so serious back then. You know, I mean,
I guess it's the 25th anniversary of like the reboot, because isn't it Paranoia XP, the rebooted one?
Yes, it's the 25th anniversary of this version. If that makes sense. So, whatever. It's $1. Go get it. And what else? Yeah, that's enough news, I think.
All right.
There's enough news. There's not really that much
You
going on.
said there was another happy news.
Okay.
But there was only one.
No, there's more happy news.
Okay.
Let's see. Well, this was hold on.
Okay. Well, if there's not, there's not. We can go into
Well,
the
they're
main
all
topic.
minor things. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Here was something silly. Goes back to Battles of Eldamon. So did you know, last week on Thursday, The Last Airbender came out on Netflix, which was pretty good. Pretty good. I mean, it was 7 out of 10. Solid 7 out of 10. Yesterday was Pokemon Day. Did you know that, Mark? It was World Pokemon Day.
I did not know that.
Yes,
That's pretty funny that we released.
Wow.
We released right after Pokemon Day and the Avatar.
Yeah, that's what I was.
We weren't even intending to do that.
And then we released Eldamon. So there you go. So how about that for weird coincidence?
I feel like, Stephen, you are clearly not learning the lesson from WoTC canceling the Brazilian Portuguese translation on the Brazil TTRPG Appreciation Day. You probably should have canceled Eldamon on Pokemon Day if you wanted to follow in that footsteps.
Oh, God. But now you can see how easy it is for that to almost happen, by the way.
Yes. It could have, right? We had good news, but it could have been bad news.
More,
You never know.
If I had the PDF, sorry, if I had the last piece of art, I would have released yesterday, and then we would have actually released on World Pokemon Day, which would have been funny.
There you go.
We're off by 1. I wanted to release at least today because it's February 28th, because if we did it on the 29th, we couldn't have the anniversary every year.
It would have been a
Fair
really
enough.
fun anniversary, though.
It would have been annoying. Well, what's his name?
No, I always feel like it would be so fun.
Well, what's his name? From WoTC. What's his name? Chris Perkins.
Don't.
Chris Perkins
okay.
is born on February 29th.
There you go.
So tomorrow's one of the only times that he gets to
That he has a
celebrate his-
birthday.
Yes,
There
he has
you
a
go.
birthday. I was there when he had his 10th birthday. I was hanging out.
Oh,
with
wow.
him. And I remember, I'm like, 10th? He's like, oh, born on That's back when he was like 40. And he's a little bit older than that. How about this way? That was when that was just during the release of 4th edition. So I'll give you an idea how long ago that was.
There you
Anyhow,
go.
let's go to the main topic, shall we?
Let's do it. I'm excited.
So why don't you explain what happened maybe a little bit, Mark?
Okay.
Just a little. Like the overall...
I can explain what we know about Evil Genius. The main topic is just about overall like RPG companies and business, but some of you who are watching this may not know this. And my source for this is mainly either direct messages that some of the people involved in this put out. And then also there's an excellent article on EN World by Morris where he got information from both sides of the situation. And I highly recommend that you read the whole article so that you can see everything that happened. But Evil Genius Games, if you've never heard of it at all, it is a new
They have their stuff.
TTRPG, newish TTRPG company that sort of suddenly appeared having been funded by an Amazon guy and put out like a successor to D20 Modernish rule set with licenses on some pretty big media companies. And we even did an episode about Evil Genius and Netflix getting into a legal kerfluffle due to the fact that Netflix was canceled their Rebel Moon RPG. But recently, there have been a number of staff members, including several that I know personally, who have resigned from Evil Genius. In their resignations, they mainly cited ethical concerns with leadership of the company. This was between December of last year and now they lost half of their workforce, either through resignations or being laid off.
Well, more than half. They had 30 and now they have 6.
Oh, well, that's way more than half. So they were reduced by a huge amount. So they lost a massive number of people. I saw more than half. I don't know exactly how many they had full time at first, but if what you said is true, that's
true.
even more significant.
Mm-hmm.
So from the people who resigned talk about ethical concerns with leadership. The CEO said that it was mainly people being opposed to like NFTs and Web3 and blockchain technology, but that is not what the people who resigned actually say. So there's a little bit of differences in what the two sides are talking about. But what looks like what happens is that they gathered like what is a pretty decent chunk of money for the tabletop RPG industry, like $1.5 million, but then hired a huge number of people with that compared to that amount of money, and then ran out of money, especially after Rebel Moon got its issues. And so they had to put on a freeze towards paying anybody for a while. The lawsuit was supposed to help with that, but it didn't go as well for Evil Genius as they were hoping that it did. It didn't make as much money as they expected. There was stuff apparently going on with this Web3 and NFT. It just wasn't the main issue that some of the people cited, in the same way that the CEO kind of put it all on that. And then there were a lot of people who, according to the article from Morris, were citing like personal relationship, work environment issues. Some of these staff members had talked about like being belittled or demeaned, and not being like treated to their like being that they were worth what their skills meant that they were worth. And so when you add that all together, you eventually got some resignation. It started with a someone in the tech department who they allegedly the CEO drafted an email but put that guy's name on it that was about technologies that he didn't support, and so he resigned. And then many other people resigned after one of the high up people in the company, Faith Elizabeth Lilly, who was the chief product officer, resigned. And you also saw resignations from the convention coordinator and organized play coordinator, both of whom I know from Pathfinder Society organized play. The executive producer, BJ Hensley, who I know from other ways, their cartographer, and a bunch of people who were working like freelance or doing other things with them, who stopped working with them. So they just wound up with a lot of people leaving.
So let me go through some of this. So very long story short, the company, they decided to take 5e modern or 5th D&D modern and convert it for 5e, and that's what Everyday Heroes is. And then they actually got a lot of very interesting licenses. They got like Rambo, they got Escape from New York, they got, what else did they get? They have very interesting movie licenses, and then you could play those movies in this game world. And it actually looked pretty cool. I mean, I definitely looked at it and I was like, and the pricing is all very reasonable for all their products. And when I went to their booth at Gen Con, I remember I was interested in buying it and it was all gone. So I was like, whoa, guess it's doing, it's pretty interesting, pretty popular. And they had pretty, and they're licensing the stuff very cheaply. Supposedly for them, it's only about like $7,500 or so, and some royalties to like license, like, I
mean, you can see in, I think, the court filings, what they were doing with Netflix.
They got like Kong Eye. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that one because that one's really fascinating. They started off with 1.5 million. So they basically had investors that gave them 1.5 million dollars, and the first thing they did was hire 30 people. Let me tell you something. I had a company, and we built Fortune 500 websites. I had 30 people, and then when I had 30 people at one time, we had... Try to guess, Mark, knowing that you and I are putting out 10 books, 2 people are putting out 10 books in 2 months. How many projects do you think my company...
With 30 people?
With 30 full-time people in Manhattan... working, not freelancers. These are full-time people working 9 to 5. Actually, it was actually 10 to 6 with my hours at Manhattan, because I don't like going in early, so I would start at 10.
Okay.
How many projects do you think we simultaneously were working on?
So I want to ask one question before I guess.
Yes.
Which is, you had 30 total people.
Yes.
But were they all involved together on each project, or were they split into small groups that where only 3 people could do a project and they didn't have to work with the other 27 people at all?
We had about 8 project managers, and the rest was divided up. Okay, it was me, it was the president, there was 3 departments: design, programming, and project management, 1 lead in each department, and then each department was about a third of the company, and we had 1 IT guy, but he was independent and not part of the 30. He would run all the computers and the networks and stuff.
Okay.
And he was
would ostensibly need at least somebody from each of the 3 departments to do a project, but you wouldn't need
if it was just the
in that
design.
department.
Then, like, if we were doing a box design for a CD-ROM, no programmer was needed. If we were doing a website, it's sometimes just back end. But the project managers were on every project. And the president...
Because getting big and having to communicate with that many people can slow you down.
Correct.
But
definitely a good point of diminishing return.
Oh, you'd be amazed. I have stories on that, but I'll get into that. That's a whole other story.
Okay, so
and
the problem is that I know a lot about making an RPG book, but I don't know a lot about how long it takes to make a top-tier Fortune 500 website, so it's going to be hard to guess, but I'm going to say that in the same period of time, 2 months, that we made 10 RPG books, that your company with 30 people made 250 projects.
Oh my God! You got it 100. You got it right on the money.
What?
It's 250.
It was literally it wasn't even 249. It wasn't 251.
Yes, 250 projects. You got it, buddy.
So what I did was I multiplied first by the number of additional people, and that got me to 150. And then I said no, though, because websites probably don't take as much.
There's a lot of small projects in there. Like some of these are 1 week, 2 week. Yeah, some of these.
Steven's also going to be asking this because it's going to be higher than just multiplying by the number of people, because he wants to sort of brag about how well it was organized. So I upped it by exactly 100, and that's how I got 250.
Plus, everything counts as a project.
It was divination. We all know it. It was witchcraft.
That was really good, Mark. Anyhow, we had approximately 250 projects simultaneously for a 30-person company. 30 people is a lot of people. I know it doesn't sound like a lot of people. If I had 30 people and we're coming out with 10 books, can you imagine? Mark, we'd have an Eldemon book every month if I had 30 people here. It would be insane how much we can get done with 30 people. 30 people is mind-boggling. I don't think they needed 30
people with the same output as you guys have?
Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know if that's common. But
I don't know. I had it in my company.
Productive.
I had it in my company. Those guys were monsters.
Well, it sounds like, Steven,
you can find those people. You can find them.
Definitely buy the idea, and I can tell that you do, of paying more to have the 10 times developer.
Yes.
The one that is, because it's a well-known fact in computer companies that if you actually can check somehow or have metrics, your number one developer in general often will be 10 times as productive as the last one. And it's not just because the number one is 10 times as much as average. It's also sometimes that the last one is below. But the main point is if you can attract those people who are the 10 times developers, you can do a huge amount.
Yes. my point is that they way overhired. It's like, and they ran out of money in like 2 months. Because I'm like, 1.5 million is nothing. I mean, it sounds like so much money. You have 30 people, even if they're not full time. I mean, you're gonna run out of money in like 3 months. I mean, it's just.
'Cause I'm sorry, just to clarify, because so you were talking about the kind of like adaptation of D20 Modern. Is that really the only project they had going on?
No. They were doing a whole
Okay.
bunch of games. My point is that how many games were they possibly doing that they needed 30 full-time people?
Mhm.
It just seems like they made the mistake, and this is very common, is that you overhire and you have like, your eyes are bright and you're all excited, and then you hire all these people, and I have one person in charge of the conventions, and I have one person just in charge of the website, and I have one person in charge of this, and one person in charge, like, in a perfect world, that's how you do it.
Mhm.
Role-playing games and role-playing development, let's see, the person who did Shadow Dark is one person. We are 2 people. Goodman Games has 3 full-time people, and Goodman Games comes out with as much stuff as we do, and they're 3 full-time people. Like, you do not need that many people, and they just weren't coming out with enough products that you needed that many people.
Mhm.
So that's the first issue, is that people very frequently overhire, especially when you had like 1.5 million. Oh my God. I'm like, oof. It's like, you got to like woefully underhire.
But it seemed like he had big dreams to
We all had
do
big dreams.
all sorts of
We all
things.
do, baby.
Honestly, even what he accomplished, what
did a
they all
lot.
accomplished, really. I shouldn't
Yeah.
say he, but that was he was the one who founded the
They did a
company
lot.
and started with the money. Even what they all accomplished at Evil Genius was pretty impressive for an RPG company that just started out of
Yes.
from nothing. Like the Everyday Heroes, had an interesting design for the game.
They're
They're good
did a lot very
licenses.
quickly.
The books were good, right?
Mhm.
Like what was accomplished was good. The problem is that it seems like it was overly ambitious and didn't have a cash flow plan to actually pay for the production.
Well, here's the next
Can
thing.
you?
Yeah, what are you gonna say about?
Sorry, do you know? Sorry, just so how many full time and how many freelance?
Supposedly 30. Okay, well, this is where it gets weird, because some people were under contract, some people were not. It says 30 full time, but they don't really caveat, because the way it works in the United States, there are laws on this, and I'm not sure, because they don't get into that. And
They made them all contractors. This was one of the
Oh, they did
points
do
that
them,
was
okay.
mentioned in the article, was that they were promised, or at least very many of them were contractors, and they were
Right.
promised that, according to the article, they were promised that they would stop being contractors and be employees
Maybe
over
that's the
time,
one,
Yeah.
as things changed.
It's-
And the milestones that were stated were not met for that,
Mhm.
which meant they didn't have healthcare and certain other
No.
things that contractors don't have. And so when you are a contractor and your pay is on the lower end, there can be some issues with that in the US. Actually, I think the Department of Labor or somewhere is changing things for how they calculate minimum wage for contractors based on some new guidelines coming in March. So
I feel like that also has like a huge impact on like the morale.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's where it gets interesting, because I knew a lot of people who worked for Disney, and I know a lot of people. So my very first job, people probably know this, I worked for MTV, and I worked for Nickelodeon and Viacom, and a lot of people will do a lot to work in an industry that is considered fun, like whether it was television or film or movies or Disney, and I don't know how much of a direct correlation there is now, but back in the day, it was like, I remember it's like, oh, you work in banking, you will make a fortune, and you'll have to go to an office every day and wear a suit, and it will suck. And I remember I was working in Bankers Trust. Everyone hated it there. And I remember that everyone hated it. And I was loving it. I was like, this is great, man. I'm out of college. I'm making a fortune. I'm like, why do you guys hate it? this is great. You know how much money you're making? Like, I hate it here. I'm like, okay, whatever. I couldn't believe it. And then I had other friends who were also working for like, MTV and Disney. They were making garbage. And I mean, they were making no money. And they hated it too. Because I was like, oh, okay, I guess everyone just hates their job. And it was like a weird, and that's the thing in role-playing games. There's so few jobs in the role-playing game community that you can really take advantage of that. I'm not saying I do that. I don't. But there's a lot of people who can, because it's like, well, where are you going to go? It's like, where else are you going to be writing games on Rambo or Skull Island or Highlander or Escape from New York or Total Recall? You won't. I mean, it's just, it doesn't exist. So
I will testify that Steven does not take advantage of the fact of the role playing game industry.
Yes,
that's good, because I feel like it's hugely common to the point where I wonder if it's the rule or the exception.
Well, I am also a contractor, but I do not have any of the problems that happen with Evil Genius's contractors because of the way it went.
I've also been doing it for 25 years, and I know how to do it so that everyone, put it this way, the majority of people work with me everyone's worked with me for 10, 20, 30 years. They're very happy. So I make it fair for everyone. So everyone benefits. Simple as that.
I think that most companies that have 20 to 30 nearly full-time-ish people do have them as employees, even in the tabletop industry. Paizo, Wizards of the Coast.
I mean, I could say we have 30 people if I'm going to say all my contractors, because
but they're not all full-time.
No. I mean, because I have easily 12 illustrators going at a time. We always have 2 or 3 coders going at a time for Foundry. We always have 2 people converting 5e for us. We have like half a dozen freelancers writing stuff for us. So depending on how you look at it, I could say that too, but I don't look at it that way. I say it's me and Mark, and then a lot of freelancers that sometimes they work all week and sometimes they don't work at all. It's just whatever we need them to. So that's the first problem. The first problem is I think these companies, they hire people, and they hire people who I think are in the industry for the wrong reasons. They're in it because they think it's fun. And my wife,
is that the wrong reason? Like, maybe that's the only reason.
It should be. It can't be the only reason, but it has to be at least one of the reasons. Like, you have to come into this job wanting to love it.
Well, yes, you do have to want to love it. But
you mean but still have the realistic feeling of
because this is what happens.
It's not going to be all fun. It's still work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Because my wife, so she worked at 17 magazine, and she worked at all these magazines, and people were like, "Oh my God, that sounds like so much fun." She's like, "It's a job." When I worked at MTV. Okay, MTV was awesome, and it was insanely fun because I was in charge of celebrities. So maybe that wasn't just a job because I met celebrities every day, but it was still awesome. And it was a fun job. And to be honest, I hate to say it, but I think Mark and I love what we do. It is annoying and hard work, and Mark and I work insane hours, but it is awfully fun to create these products. And
it's both fun and brain-busting difficult work.
Yes, it's incredibly hard. The stuff that we do.
It's a nice amount of work and effort to make it meaningful and challenging and rewarding.
But I think Mark would be a good programmer, and a lot of the coders I have given them easy jobs, and they think they're gonna like it, but they don't, because they'd much rather be challenged. They like it for a couple of weeks. It
can get tedious if it's long but easy, and you don't have to exercise creativity, and it's just I'm just regurgitating more simple code a million times.
So that's the thing. It's sort of you just need to balance it. You need to balance between very brain breaking stuff and not. But anyhow, I think
I think the book I'm reading these days called The Upside of Stress, and that's the entire thing.
Oh, really?
The entire premise. It's just just the idea of of converting the stress, like your outlook on stress, to realize how the challenge of it can really just bring so much. I'm not done with the book, so I'm not going to comment more. Maybe next time.
Well, I'm always stressed, so
yeah,
maybe
let us know
I'm
what the
actually
upset
curious
is.
now about that book because that's all I do.
I'm honestly really, really into the all the research and the studies they're showing in that book. It's been crazy.
Interesting, because if I'm not stressed, I'm bored, and being bored is worse. But
being bored is worse. Being bored is really worse.
Oh,
But
way
also the
worse.
thought that like being stressed it is scary to think of stress, because you think of all the negative things that come with it, the like tension, all of that. But also there's like stress is generally the situations in which you kind of come up with the most creative solutions often.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yes.
And stress and excitement being tied together, I can see it's like a suspension bridge effect of fear versus attraction to someone that you see in that psychological study with the bridge where people asked the person who was giving them questionnaires out on a date if they were on a scary bridge. But stress and excitement kind of stimulate some of the same parts of our brain.
Yeah, they do come together, and there's like again, I'm gonna stop talking about that book, but there is like a huge number of like different like stress responses that go way beyond like fight or flight or freeze and stuff, and there's so many more different responses that come with stress that can be like really interesting to like look into, so you can like harness them properly, and it's super interesting.
I completely understand. I'd be very interested in that book because you're right, there's different types of stress, because like a good example of the stress I have to deal with on my day job is that we deal with like websites going down all the time, and me and all my coders, like we will literally have clients losing their minds, and we're just like, oh, okay, here, well, let's take care of that. Like, we're fine. We've seen this 1,000 times. We do not get stressed about this stuff. By the way, if we do get stressed, then we start making mistakes. So we have to stay calm. Plus, with the clients, to make sure they realize that we're okay. And 99% of the time, we usually fix it within a few minutes or within an hour or so. And we've seen it before. That's the other thing. It's like, if you've seen it 500 times, it's not so stressful for us because we know what we're doing. But for everyone else, it's extremely stressful. So there's that type of stress, but then there's stress like, I don't know, like you get into a car accident, like that's a different type. Like that's almost uncontrollable.
This is like a type of stress that isn't stress. Like this is like
controllable stress.
This is like trauma.
Trauma. Okay, that's even more interesting, because trauma is like, there's stress and there's trauma. Trauma you can't do anything about, but stress you can almost kind of somewhat manage in some ways. Anyhow.
I will say something from that book, a last thing, because this is just entirely relevant to the example that you just said, which is, I don't remember the name of the guy, but one of the things that the author is talking about is how this idea came to be that stress is really bad for your health, right? How this idea came to be is from a study that some dude did a long ass time ago, where he had mice and rats put under terrible torture situations, life-threatening shit, like they were getting like hurt and all that, and then the conclusion was like, oh yeah, the like stress kind of like was bad for them, but this was not stress, this was full-on trauma. But by the time like that came out, like the news and media already had gripped onto the idea that stress was a terrible thing. And when he later on was like, okay, but like this was not like just stress, this was full-on like terrible situations, and try to give some more studies and like spread the word that stress can have some positive benefits. It was kind of too late, and we already had gripped onto the idea that stress was just inherently bad for our health and just inherently bad for our relationships, for our state of mind, and all of that. And so there's a huge difference between stress, like everyday stress, and stuff you have to deal with at work, and then just like a car accident being full on trauma.
So
absolutely. So I want to cycle back to the having too many people thing, Stephen, because I think this is part of a bigger fulcrum of issues that I've seen in the tabletop industry, which is that sometimes the number of people that the company have is part of a bigger problem that is harder to see, because you'll have a company that you think might have too many people and it loses people or it takes on more projects. And then it doesn't actually have enough people to perform those projects. And the projects are not getting done. Everybody is getting overworked and putting in way too many hours. And then they have to hire someone else to fill in that gap. And then they add more projects because they want to add the projects to get money to pay for the person that they hired. And it's almost like a chain of dominoes that keeps going. And I think that in some cases, it might seem like the problem is that the underlying problem is the like number of people, whether it's too high or too low, or the number of projects. But in reality, it might be something like the margins that are made on each project, or like the fact that some of the projects are less lucrative than others, but are still being pursued, if you see what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest issue is that, I mean, this even happens to us. It's like you work on these projects and you hope and pray. Anything creative, I mean, movies do this all the time. It's like they put out a movie and they hope they make money, and sometimes they will and sometimes they won't. Video games, same way. And that's why so many of these video games and properties and movies and even Broadway shows are all using licensed properties, because it's like, well, we're guaranteed to make some money. And even that's not happening anymore, by the way. They use a licensed property is that we won't make as much money, but we could always guarantee a certain floor amount of money. So what happens is like my favorite book maybe of all time that we came out with was The World of Battle Zoo, Indigo Isles. Yay, I love this book.
You like it more than Jewel of the Indigo Isles?
It's different. I think Jewel, but this was the most, let me put it this way, this was the most fun book I had to work on.
It is very fun.
It was
I
very
just have so much fun
to work
reading
on
the
this
different
book.
lore sections.
This is a fun book. I love this book. But, it's selling fine. I mean, it's not one of our best sellers. It's not whatever. I mean, I don't think we have any worse sellers, but it's like our Dragon book is probably our best seller.
Steven, we must have at least one that is the lowest, even if it's good.
Well, it's hard to say.
The others are all great and
well, this just came out, so it's hard to say because I have to look at it.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, it's hard to say. But the point is that I really was hoping this would be a huge success, because then I could come out with more of these, and I will. Don't get worried. I have a better idea, because this really should have been 2 books. I should have cut this in half, made this 2 books. So if I do this again, I'm going to do that. So it's not one 300-page book. It will be like 250-page books. But the point is that you just don't know. And, that was a lot of work and a lot of effort. And then there's a huge amount of art in that. It's a 300-page book. And it did fine. But, it's not like probably the runaway success was the book that Mark's just like, hey, you want to do a dragon book? I'm like, okay, whatever.
To be fair,
how do you figure out, like, sorry.
Oh, yeah, no worries. Go ahead.
You can go, Val.
How do you get a sense of like what you think will sell well and what will not? Like, is it like a full-on gamble, or like you have some kind of idea for figuring that out?
Well,
that fits in with what I was going to say, which is, to be fair, I had a strong opinion that the dragon thing would sell well. And that's one of the reasons I pitched it to Steven.
Mm-hmm.
Because I happen to have some information from like another third-party publisher that I'd worked with back in a previous game, that they had put out a whole bunch of stuff, and they put out they actually also did a lot of things that are similar to Monster Ancestries, although they did them as classes, like new class for any particular monster. And the dragon one, he's told me, made so much more money than all the rest of them, because everyone loves dragons. And I was like, well, I love dragons too. I see what you're saying. So when Steven asked what would be something that would be popular that is cool, I said we can do something fantastic with dragons. And there's at least some data from someone else that dragons are also popular with other people, and not just the 2 of us sitting here. So there's a way to guess based on past results, but even then, there's no guarantee, because it could have been lightning in a bottle the previous time.
But to be fair, so this is what we did, Val. Mark had some data on dragons. I spoke to Eric Mona at Paizo, and I asked him his opinions, because he obviously has published hundreds of books, and he told me what does well. And one of the ones that usually does well is monster books. And so they're very expensive, though. See, monster books are catch-22, because they're very expensive to produce, because they have so much art and there's a lot of work, but they usually sell very well.
Monster books do fine.
Yeah.
They don't do the most, but they definitely don't do anywhere near the least. They do much better overall, in my opinion, and just experience than adventures usually, but they don't do as well as something like the Dragon book. They're kind of in the middle, and they're around where like the best lore book you could ever imagine might hit a lower monster book, and then the monster books are kind of there, and then you get to your like
character options, this
character options. Yeah, bingo. That's exactly right, Val.
Right. Well, the thing with character options, I think I'll get into that. Those can be very risky, but basically, it was like working with an established brand. It's like you probably won't make a mint, but you probably won't lose money with a monster book. Correct. So it was like a good gamble of your first book, and you also learn a lot. So if you're going to do something, it's very straightforward. It has a very basic layout. It is very, very easy to create in the sense of layout, design, and structure, because they're all the same. So it was a very good book to do as your first book. The Dragon book was the second book we ever did, and that one, Mark wrote it, the whole thing. And at that time, I was starting to get the feel of it. And then our third book really was the Jewel the Indigo Wow. So I go from like, oh, let's do a really easy book to a book that's a little bit hard to a book that is impossible. That was the hardest thing ever made, period. That's 430 pages long. Good job, Steve. Anyhow, don't do that because we're nuts. But now what we do, and it's working out very well, is that I will come out with a small project that maybe is a 20 or 30 page book and see how it does. And if it does well, then we expand it. And that has been working out very well for us because we're allowed to experiment.
Yeah.
Yes, we're allowed to experiment with these things. And quite frankly, we also ask people. We actually put out polls and surveys to see what people want. We also
Steven is more willing to experiment and try something different and untested than almost anyone else I've seen in the tabletop RPG space, especially that's going at like this level of book production. Mm-hmm. Most of the time it's more like, well, we know this works. We've done it before. We'll do it again this way. Mm-hmm. Steven's always willing to shake things up, roll the dice, and then see what happens, which means that some of those can be great successes that can be capitalized on.
Mm-hmm.
It also sounds like it's the kind of thing that allows you to have like passion projects and just like, well, you know, it's a smaller project. I'm not going to like put like 300 pages into something, you know, but it's a nice way to just like just allow you to have fun with it. Sounds great.
Yeah, we do little passion projects, like just our little ancestries are basically little passion projects, and they don't take that long to do because they're they're like 10, 15, 20 pages. So, you know, that's to us, that's nothing. Yeah, that's a weekend. So, you know, that's nothing for us. Yeah. So those are easy projects. And then for the bigger ones, I'm definitely going to be a little bit more careful of. Like I've learned my lesson because I knew Eldamon was going to be hard, but it was a lot harder than I thought. And that's good. Now I'm learning too, and that's why Mark was even hired, because Mark knows the industry, he knows his stuff, and that's something else. You need to have people you're working with who know what they're doing in their fields. And Mark knows how to write these books. He knows what to sell. He knows what other people have done, since most of it, he wrote most of them. So he can know if he's copying himself, which is believe it or not, a pretty big deal, because you want to make sure you didn't come out with a system that I'm like, that system already exists in another book. You know, it's like, oh, I just literally copied something that I wasn't aware of. So you got to be
you won't get in trouble for being super similar. It's just that it won't sell as well as people already have it.
Yeah. So, you know, you just really have to be careful. The other thing you need to do is come out with a niche. Now, strangely, they came out with a very good niche.
I thought they had a niche. They had a hook.
Great niche. They came out with this Everyday Heroes, where they're coming out with role-playing supplements from some of my favorite movies of all time. Great idea. because people.
It's especially good because your demographic and slightly older are people who have the money to be buying RPGs on nostalgia. A lot of things are selling for boomer or older Gen X nostalgia.
Honestly, pitching like Escape from New York and into it sounds great.
It is.
I admit.
Right. Wait, I have it here. It's actually awesome. Even if you never run it, it just has all the lore and information. It's just like, this is awesome. Like someone sat down and really thought this out.
The authors at Evil Genius are great.
Yeah.
And they make good product. They absolutely did. That's part of the tragedy of all of this. Yes. One of the many tragedies of it.
Yeah, you really need a niche. And I'm not throwing anyone under the bus, but there's so many books that you see that are like, oh, here's 10 new classes for 5e. All right, great. You know, there's a lot, and they sell well.
I mean, honestly, some of them are fun new classes or features, but it's hard to get
thematic coherence.
And this is so our pitch, what Roll for Combat's pitch is that we do the impossible. We'll do things that people will literally say that is impossible to do, and we're like, hold my beer. It's like, you can't make an intelligent weapon a playable PC race.
You can't make a dungeon.
You can't make a dungeon a playable PC race. Oh yes, we can, and we do. Like, we will find the hardest impossible things and publish it, and think we do a pretty good job of it. Even this, like, people are like, oh, why is there not a Pokemon type game system in D&D or Pathfinder? Well, we found out why. Because it's impossibly hard to do. It is ridiculous.
There are smaller projects that try to do it with the existing monsters.
So hard.
And it sort of lets you get the idea of collecting monsters, but if you want something that really feels like its own system and you don't have to like kind of struggle against the existing monsters that don't always fit in 5e,
that don't feel like a compromise, that like actually feels like like it's organic.
Right, like we have it that you're playing a doppelganger, and the number one thing that I heard when the doppelganger came out, Mark, was people were like, oh my god, you are literally a doppelganger. This isn't some like, oh, he's kind of a doppelganger. Like, no, you're playing a doppelganger as a PC, and it's balanced. You're playing a mimic, an actual mimic. Like, you didn't skimp. Mark wrote all those. Like, you didn't skimp on the abilities. You might not have full capability at level 1 and mimic anything, but you can still do it. And as you level up, you get better at it, and then you can do more. You can do it.
You're not as fast as a base mimic. And I'm sorry, you're not as fast at mimicking things that are not your main thing. And you don't have the glue because you intentionally got rid of the glue, so your movement speed wouldn't be 10 feet like the base mimic, because that is, without some weird hijinks going around it, 10 feet is not enough movement speed. So you have much better movement speed. You don't have the glue from the base. You can get some things to give yourself the glue later on. And you have certain form that you can mimic fast, and the other ones are a little bit slower. But that's it, and you're a mimic.
So our thing, I'm just using us as an example just because a lot of people know our products, and well, so why we're here is that, so that's kind of our thing. So they actually had
I think we're also a good example due to the fact that,
well, we're an RPG company.
As far as I know, and I'll assume that this is true, like, we're doing well, and
we're doing pretty well.
We're doing well, and like we're also doing well for like the people who are doing stuff. Right. Whereas that's important with the number of people we have and the number of projects we take on, because many,
and I'm getting better at that. No, I think I personally was taking a little bit too much, and Mark agrees, but I'm getting better at that. And Mark actually has been helping me balance that. So I still take on, I'd say I used to take on way too much. Now I just take on a little bit too much, which is, I'd rather take on a little bit too much than
I
way
think
too
that's
much.
fine.
Yeah, a little
The
too
main
much
thing that
fine.
it is Stephen will always suggest adding something. And I have always given the caution flag based on my experience. And if he says, no, I'm still doing it, I'll say, great, we can do it, but it may delay other projects. If that's okay, let's push go. And he will push go.
And then I just prioritize things, and I'm fine with that.
We know how to prioritize. It's a juggling game. It's pretty difficult, but we can do it.
So you need to have that. Now, this is where it gets very, 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 very interesting. Now you have to actually. There's a podcast. So what's it? Morris has a weekly podcast on their EN News, and he talked about this. It wasn't in the article, but so what happened is right after they got their funding, they basically did. There's a few things that happened. They got to do the RPG game for Rebel Moon, which is the movie franchise that was going to be. So every year, Netflix comes out with one huge movie during Christmas. And their big Christmas movie last year was Rebel Moon, which was by Zack Snyder, same guy who did 300 and a lot of the DC movies. And it was supposed to be his version of Star Wars. And it got okay reviews. How well it did, I have no idea. I expect it did extremely well. And Rebel Moon got...
I have not heard of it at all.
Oh, really?
I feel like this confirms that I live in a cave. Yeah.
That's okay. A lot of people didn't hear about it. So anyhow, Rebel Moon, it's a 2-part series. The first part came out during Christmas, and then the second part's coming out, I think, in April. And what's fascinating is that it was his original script for Star Wars, and it was rejected, so he just redid it and made it his own thing. It's basically like a Star Wars ripoff, literally, because it was supposed to be a Star Wars script. And they being Evil Genius, got the role-playing game. Mm-hmm. And they worked on it really hard. And then, literally the day after they got their funding, they were informed by Netflix that their contract was canceled. Here's where you got to be careful in business. Because when we reported it, Mark, and if you remember this, that at Gamma last year, in April... they said they came out and then they showed pictures of the game. They showed conceptual artwork. They talked about it. They basically showed all this top secret stuff to retailers. And
Morris mentioned this in the written article too, because Evil Genius alleged that they had been in contact with Netflix about the Gamma presentation. It was a joint presentation.
Correct.
That it had been approved.
Correct.
Netflix alleges that, according to Netflix's briefing, Evil Genius basically sent them a message, Netflix claims, that was like, we're going to show this unless you say no. All you have to do if you want us to show it is do nothing. But if you don't want us to show it, then you must respond. And then they didn't respond, and then they showed it. Which, if that Netflix claim is true, that makes it seem a lot murkier than Evil Genius's claim.
There's about 10 of those, if you listen to... There's a lot of those, by the way. That was not the only one. There turns out to be all these claims, and it's the problem when you get one side of the story. The original claims was like, oh, we did this right, and we did this right, and we did this right. Netflix claims very differently on everything that they claim. Evil Genius claims that they did, and silence is not acceptance. And that is, as someone who talks to his lawyer every day, you cannot, and you're going to be working with a company like Netflix, you cannot fool around, man. You cannot just say, oh, they didn't say anything. We'll just show it in front of this small audience, in front of Gamma. That's maybe 20 people. What's the worst that can happen? Well, you lost your whole contract and your company went out of business. You better get that in writing, that you can do it. And then after you get it in writing, you get it in writing again. I swear to God, you get it twice. You get backups of your backups. They didn't do any of that. According to the claims that they just said, oh, we're going to show this. They never heard anything from Netflix. So they just said, oh, okay, cool. We're going to show it, because they never wrote back. They said they had no issues with it. No, they just never wrote you back. That doesn't mean you can show it. And then they canceled it. And they had every right. According to the contract, they violated the terms of the contract. They lost this work. And then Netflix offered them, and this was supposed to be like a $3 million project, they offered them $50,000 just for the work they completed. And they owned everything. Whether it was canceled or not, they can never publish it. So basically, Netflix owned it. Even if they never get paid for it, Netflix still owns it. And supposedly, they did settle out of court, and they got something like $500,000. So they actually...
supposedly, they were hoping to get $3 million.
Yeah, but they
according
actually...
to the article.
Supposedly, they got about $500,600. I think it was like... It was somewhere... I think it was $600,000. It was either $500,000 or $600,000. So They actually got a lot. And to Netflix, it was just easier for them to get rid of it. And maybe this could have dragged out, and and they probably didn't want bad press, so they just bought them off. And then they were able to settle. And which is one of the reasons why it's like, good thing they didn't take the $50,000. And then using that money, they were able to pay everyone off, and everyone then left the company. The point is that I have been to court too many times in my lifetime, and you cannot hope. There's hopes and wishes do not work in business. They just don't. I wish they did. And
that's a really good quote. Hopes and wishes do not work. Okay, just so you know, I'm like taking notes on everything that's happening, so that at the end of this stream we can recap like your 10 commandments to running a TTRPG business that is successful. Yeah, and this quote is going down. Hopes and wishes do not work in business. Is that what you were saying?
Hopes and wishes does not work in business. I mean, you got to get everything in writing, and I mean everything, and if not duplicate, if not triplicate. I mean, especially when you're working with big companies. I mean, I work with all Fortune 500s. I've worked with Disney. I've worked with, you name it. I work with pharmaceutical companies, and that's my bread and butter is working with pharmaceutical. And these companies, not only that, they're under federal regulation and FDA regulation, all this. So I have government regulations I got to deal with. Like, you have to have everything buttoned up. And if you don't, you're just asking for it. I mean, you shouldn't be surprised when Netflix comes around suing you and canceling your contract because you violated it. And you can say all day, as much as you want in public, that I did not violate it. And that's fine. But when the rubber hits the road and you go to court and they start looking at emails and they find out you violated it, don't matter. It doesn't matter what you say. You can wish it all you want. So you got to be very careful. And I think a lot of people are just very excited. I mean, I remember that. I remember when I first started my business and I was so excited, and I was talking to my dad who had his own business and some of his friends, and they were I remember this when I was really young. I was like in my 20s, and they were like, "Oh, Steve, you can't just like have the numbers go up. Like, you see the numbers go up, like you're doing more and more, but are you actually making money? Are you actually able to stay in business?" And that's really important. It's like, yeah, the numbers go up and that's cool, and you're selling more books and doing more things, but if you can't pay people and you can't actually make a living, then you're going to go out of business, and then the numbers will go down to zero. So it's just, unfortunately, making games is fun, but in the end of the day, and I hate to say this, because I would say this in my podcast when I was doing video games. It was like, what do game companies make? People are like, oh, they make games. They make video games. I'm like, no, they make money. Video games are a byproduct. They're actually making money. That's their goal. And they make money by making games. And that is, unfortunately, a big part of this, is that, yes, you can have a lot of fun while you're making these games, and you can have a lot of fun in the industry and meeting people and playing games, but and I think a lot of people learn this the hard way, is that they put all their blood, sweat, and tears into a game, and then they try to sell it, and then they find out that they look back and they're like, wow, I just lost 20 grand making this game. And maybe it was worth it, maybe they didn't care, maybe they're just doing it for the love of the game, but maybe they're like, oh crap, I was hoping I'd at least make my money back, and then they don't, and then suddenly they get soured on it. And if you're doing it and it's just you, that's one thing. But if you're doing it and there's a company and there's 30 people there, which is what I think kind of happened, then suddenly all those people are affected, not just you. So you got to be very careful.
So other than workflow versus cash flow and like the number of people versus the number of projects, are there any other major takeaways for issues that...
I got one big one, is that you will hire people, especially people who are very excited to be in the industry and to do this. And if anyone ever read the book Microserfs, was that it? Yeah, was it no, not Microserfs.
How you say Microserfs?
Yeah, Microserfs. It was actually by the guy who invented the term Gen X. Microserfs. Hold on. Yeah, Microserfs is he was the guy who invented the term. Douglas Copeland. And Douglas Copeland has written a couple of books about work culture in the 90s and in the 80s. And it was mostly in Microsoft and like what it was like to work there. And Microservice is about people who start up a company, which, by the way, their final product ends up being Minecraft. So how about that for ahead of it? And he wrote this in the 80s. And I was like, oh my God, he was like so far ahead of everyone. But one of the things is that he wrote in that book, and I always remember, is that people will work for fun up until the age of 30. And then after that, they get disillusioned. And that's...
Shit. I have 4 years left. And then I will never have fun again.
Well, the point is that people will take jobs just for the hell of it. Like, yeah, I'm not making any money, but I'm having fun. And I'm doing this thing that I love. Well, that also will happen in this industry. It's like, oh, I'm making role-playing games. It's so much fun. Yeah, I'm not making that much money, but it's fun. Well, the other two things are going to happen. Either A, you're going to get older and you realize I can't do this anymore. I need to actually start making money, and you'll quit your job and do something else. Or B, you'll realize very soon, before you're 30, you'll realize, and I find this usually happens more often than not, within 6 months to a year, you'll realize, yeah, this is a job. Sure, it's fun, but after doing this, I realize this is actually just a job, and yeah, we're doing fun things in the job, but it's just as much work. And I might as well be doing something that I maybe don't love as much, or maybe I could do this on the side. And you just have to make sure that if you're going to hire people like that, and I've seen this a lot in these industries, and Disney does this, is they realize these people are only going to be there for a couple of months or a year and then leave. And they're okay. Like a company like Disney, they can hire people dirt cheap and just churn through them because they don't care. And then they'll just keep hiring the new people over and over again. But in a company like this, you have to hire the right people, and then they have so much institutional knowledge. If they leave, you can lose years of work. So you can't do that. You have to hire the right people at the right time. You can't hire people that you want to use up, to use lack of a better term.
So using up, It fits my experience with talking to a lot of people in the industry. It's very tied to what I was getting at before when you talked about high headcount versus projects, because a lot of places I've seen actually have, even if they have a high headcount, it's low versus the number of projects that they're putting out and the number of people that they need or that they use in their process to make the product. And so therefore people are burning out. They're being overworked, and it is using them up. It is basically because in some cases, and like some cases, the products were sold for so low of an amount that maybe they had to either hire fewer people, in which case they would be more overworked, or in many cases, what they do, like you said, Stephen, is they pay not enough money for the level of expertise that you need to get someone who can do the job well and quickly, because it's harder than it seems. But instead, money is part of it, and the rest of it runs on enthusiasm, which is then burned away. And so they kind of like, this is not the tabletop RPG exclusive. This is, like you said, it's Disney, it's movies, it's video games, it's any kind of passion project / like, this is what I love style job can try to give a lower salary that makes up for the rest of it with enthusiasm. And then they burn you down until you just hit the end and leave. And then they find someone else who does have the enthusiasm and who will start at the lower salary again. And that's how it goes. So this is very, very common, and it's not tabletop RPG exclusive at all.
It's sadly a lot of industries.
Oh yeah, it's definitely more. It's in a lot of industries, but it's definitely more common in industries where it's rare and hard to find a good job. And that's usually, quote, the fun industries like movies, TV, role-playing games. It used to be video games, not anymore.
My first thought is catering.
Your first
all
was
the like
what?
fancy hotels. My first thought is catering, hotels and restaurants and all that. Like it's sorry, I just it's the kind of jobs that to me feel like it's like it requires so much energy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about it, my sister does that, and it's really crazy how much a lot of the employees are that. Like, I mean, they're just people coming in doing these very hard and like both physically demanding jobs as well as like exhausting jobs, who are coming in being really young, at some point just can't really keep that enthusiasm anymore, burn out, and eventually are replaced by younger people who just, like Mark was saying, will take the lower salary. But sorry, I'm seeing that a lot in the catering stuff.
Oh,
But
okay,
yeah, for
catering,
sure.
got
Video
it.
games, movies, TTRPG.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
So anyhow, I mean, they just did a lot of these very classic things. Is that they overhired, they got a lot of money, and they thought, oh, this is great. We'll just keep going up, and we'll just go up from here. They also did a few other strange things. Is that they started to try to go into Web3 and to go into cryptocurrencies and like go into crypto markets, and that is. I won't get into that. That's like I could do a whole subject on that. That's a very interesting topic. And there's a lot of easy money to be made there. But it's like the gold rush. It's like the amount of people who are making that easy money is extremely small. And everyone thinks they can just do it and go into it. And it's turning into this thing of like, oh, there was, a year ago, this was very big. It's like, oh, we had these digital assets where like, I will sell you something and you're the only person in the world who has that asset and no one else has it. And it turns out no one cares. It seemed like, and they thought, oh, we'll make so much money on this, even if we only charge $1, $2, or $10, and then we could basically make virtual Magic the Gathering, where, oh, you have a Black Lotus and there's only 10,000 Black Lotuses in the entire world, and if you want it, then you have to get it from someone who has theirs, and there's no other way to get it. And that's what they were thinking. They were thinking, oh, we'll do something like that in the TTRPG world. But first of all, it takes a huge amount of money to actually run those. To make those is actually, it's very expensive. It's a lot more expensive than you think. And there's no demand for it. It just isn't. There's no demand. There was a lot of stories about it, but you know what? There was a lot of stories about 3D TVs 10 years ago too. Remember those? Remember everyone wanted to have a 3D TV, and then no one wanted a 3D TV? By the way, I'll tell you a secret about that. TVs last usually like 5, 10, 15 years. So people in these industries have to continuously come up with ways for you to buy the new thing. So they're always going to have something new in the TV so that you upgrade your existing television. So that's why 3D TV became such a big deal, because if you didn't have a 3D TV, then you need to upgrade and buy it. Now it's smart TVs. There's always going to be something that you need, that they're going to make it that you need, so that you buy and upgrade your TV, which you've already had for 10 years. That works fine. By the way. So they're trying to figure out how to do that in other industries, including role-playing games. And it doesn't work. I mean, it just, unfortunately, it doesn't. Anyhow.
So in this case, though, the company was, I feel, based on burnout rates I've seen across the industry for tabletop RPGs, the company was not old enough that it would have hit its attrition sort of naturally due to the economic problems of tabletop role-playing games and hiring for enthusiasm, except that allegedly, according to this article, there was also additional burnout from the way that leadership treated some of the staff members, and did not show that they valued the staff members, and instead were like demeaning them for what they were doing.
So, very long story short is they basically fell prey to what hundreds of other companies fall prey to every single year. It's the same. It's actually fascinating. It's sort of the same story, just in a different industry. They started out bigger and got more money and then crashed. Supposedly, they're still trying to come back from it. They have a big meeting in Gamma. They're being very open about their issues, and it looks like they're trying to. What's fascinating about this is that they're not out of business. They're just gotten smaller, and it looks like they're going to try to recover from this. And they do have a lot of products, and they're probably selling or can continuously sell what they have enough to keep them in business for a small company, just not 30-person company, but they can probably do it for a 5-6-person company or 3-person company. But they're going to definitely need to be a lot smaller if they want to keep it up. What about you, Val? Do you have any interest in going into this type of industry or doing this type of work? I know you enjoy it and you're doing your YouTube channel, but is this just a hobby, nothing more, nothing less?
Oh no, I enjoy it a lot, and I would love to fully go into it. I know that I don't have the same output as you do. That's my main issue. Until I get my productivity in hand, I'm just going to work slowly but surely.
Well, a big secret of that
it does
is
take a lot of stamina.
You just have to do it more and more, because like anything,
Yeah, I do feel like the more it goes, the more practice comes in, the
Yes.
easier it gets, right? Like
yes,
now I'm realizing how I'm still getting my shit together with the whole YouTube thing, and trying to figure out a workflow where I don't wait a month and a half to 2 months between each video. But when it comes to other things, right? Like I do feel like writing comes easier and easier with experience, and running adventures now is kind of like, I already know the structure. I already figure out how it works. Like I'm fine. And the more it goes, the more these things come naturally. And I know that eventually it's not going to feel effortless, because I do feel like work that is worth making shouldn't be entirely effortless. You know, it feels like there needs to be, as we were saying, a sense of like challenge, an effort for it to feel rewarding, for it to feel innovative as well. But I do sense like the more it goes, the easier it gets. And yeah.
I mean, that's actually it. Like, I used to get that question a lot. It's like, how do you do it? You just have to do it. Like so John Statz, who's on my podcast, and he worked at Blizzard, and he was the first 3D developer ever hired for Blizzard, and worked on World of Warcraft and did all the dungeons. He did all of the vanilla wild dungeons. He did Stormwind. He did Booty Bay. He did like all the original 30 dungeons are his. And people are like, how'd you get that job? How'd you do it? He started doing Doom modules for fun, and just every night he would work all day in advertising and then come home at night and then literally just spend all of his time doing 3D work in Doom, making levels. And one day, someone from Blizzard loved his work so much that they called him up and said, do you want to fly in? Because we love what you've been doing. We might have a job for you. And, that's how he became a professional dungeon designer. It's that he just did it. And that's how you do it. You just have to do it. Simple as that.
Have to do it and get started, and go with it with the thought that if you wait to have everything figured out before you start, then you're never going to start, because there's always going to be more things to learn and to figure out, especially in an area like this one, where it's just an ever renewing kind of like, it's, I don't know. I think to me that was the main thing, right? Because
you just got to keep doing it. And like writing it, what you said is actually very true. Because like, I feel at this point, I mean, I've been writing for so long and so much that I can just read stuff and just edit it very quickly. And the only reason I mentioned this is because my son is taking like ACTs right now, and he's really having trouble with the writing. And I'm looking at this and it's just so easy, but I'm also thinking, yes, but I've been doing this for so long. I wish I could just somehow teach them, how to do it. You just
there's no
can't.
shortcuts for it
Yeah, there's
sometimes.
no
Like,
shortcut. Exactly. There's just no shortcuts.
And there's even things that are like, there are shortcuts where I think to me the craziest thing, the lessons that people tell you, and like you remember it, but you don't understand it until much later when you've like had the full that experience that came with it to make you really understand why that thing matters. Because now I'm realizing there's so many things that people told me are important that I never really paid attention to, or like I knew it was important, but I didn't understand how it was important until like experience came along with it. And I don't want it to sound like, because I feel like every time I say like, oh, there's no shortcut, it sounds like a very sad thing, because I'm personally the kind of person who looks for, I would love to have like rule of thumb, like just whatever I can, like concrete that I can like start practicing right away. And that's not always possible.
I will caveat your thing. There's a caveat.
Yeah.
And you'll like this caveat. I have noticed over the years, and this is especially when I was hiring coders and designers, there's a thing called the designer's eye. And there's the same thing for coding. There's people who just might have natural affinities for things. Same thing in sports. Like, it's very well known that, or maybe you don't know this, but like if you are people who are professional athletes are usually good at all sports. They're not just good at they might be a professional baseball player. I hate to break it to you. They're also probably better than 99% of the world at every other sport. They're just naturally inclined to being good at sports for whatever reason. And everyone has this. Everyone has something they're naturally inclined at. Some people are very good in math. Some people are very good. I know somebody who knew 20 languages, worked for the UN. She could learn languages like it was nothing. I suck at languages. I could never learn another language, no matter. I can put in 100 times more effort than she would, and I still wouldn't learn a language as quickly as she can. So there's certain things you will naturally be good at. And I'll use an example. Your editing on your videos, Val, is so good. I was like, I will never be as good. I can spend 10 times. You've been probably doing this for just a few years, and yours is so good. I'm like, I can't even figure out how to get that level. And you just have it, which is nice. And you're good at it. But that's something else. I think you have to figure out what not only did you like, but also what you are naturally good at, and then you will accelerate at it way faster, if that makes sense.
See, I think I do feel like, because the editing thing, I mean, I do get the sense I'm doing pretty good at it, and I'm happy with it, but I also it is something that I dedicated quite some time to in college, trying to figure out how editing worked. And I do feel like maybe I have a good sense of timing.
You do,
which helped a lot with that. But it's still something that I don't know. It's the whole it's not a fatality. How do you pronounce this word?
Fatality.
Fatality.
Yeah. Well, that's killing someone. What word are you looking for?
Yeah, that word, not killing someone, but it's a definite thing that will happen. It's doomed to happen. You're not doomed to not know how to edit if you're not naturally have an eye for it or something. I
know what you're getting at.
I have a natural. Yeah. What I'm getting at is it's you can learn anything, and I know that because
finality,
I'm a really stubborn person, and I work in projects. I don't I really frustrated. I really frustrate people because they try to teach me how to do something properly, and I'm like that's cool, but I want to learn just as much as I need to complete this one project, because ultimately I know that the way I will learn is by completing a project and just figure out what needs to go into it. And the more goes into it, the more I learn into the process, right? But so in the process, I've learned to do so many things. I've learned to sew. I've learned to solder. Bless you. I've learned to work with silicone. I've learned to work with molds. I've learned to write. To edit everything, and it's a very eclectic skill set, but it's one that proves that you can kind of just, because you don't have like a natural talent or something, doesn't mean that you're doomed to never get it, and that just by doing it you will learn it. It's just the learning curve seems steep, but it gets there, you know?
Yeah,
it gets there.
And well, that's the thing. There's things you enjoy doing that you might stink at, or you might never be great at. Like, I mean, like I've been playing tennis since I was a little kid, and I'm good. I'm actually very good at tennis. But if you put in, I've probably played tennis for 1,000,000 hours. And let me tell you, for someone who put in this much time, I should probably be way better at tennis than I am. I mean, it's one of those like, wait, you've been doing this for how long? You should be a lot better. I'm like, I know. I'm just never going to be that good. But I still enjoy doing it. And that's very common in sports. Like, I know a lot of people who love golf and they're always bad at it and they've been playing their whole life. And and then there's people, I have another friend of mine.
Sometimes you have to immerse yourself really heavily before you can improve past a certain point. Even if you do a lot of hours, if you do it casually, it's different. It's like,
you're 100% right on that too.
I saw that firsthand because I actually took when I was in grad school doing work on like language understanding and AI. I took Japanese as a listener because it was the language that MIT offered that was the most different from English, and I wanted to see if there were some interesting linguistic differences in it. And at first they were like, we don't accept listeners because they don't do the work. But I convinced them, and I did do the work. And when I started out that class, I was near the top of my class because I'm actually relatively good at picking up languages. But by the time I completed the final semester, I was in the bottom few people of the class because everyone except me, more or less, who actually made it through to the final semester went on like studied abroad, immersed themselves, actually went deeply into it, whereas I continued to put in the same amount of time I always did each week to learn the material. And so it wasn't because I was getting worse, it was because everyone else was getting really good because they immersed themselves even when they were struggling. The same student was struggling earlier on before they did that internship abroad. So I can tell you that, Stephen, it's not just, it's part of it is, some people have natural inclinations. They can pick up certain things easier.
Exposure to it really does help. Yeah.
If you started doing only tennis for 8 hours a day for a year, you would probably, maybe your body would break down somewhat. That may be too much. But if it didn't, and if you were okay, even after your karate injuries, then you might get better.
Yeah.
By a lot.
Yeah, I think it's also like reassuring, right? I think about this a lot because, I mean, my students are stressing out a lot about their work. I mean, it's a program where they start out, and by the end they're going to have to know so much about applied arts. But when they start, like none of them have any design experience. They don't know what they're doing, and they take it to heart like so quickly. They start, and this perfectionism is what really gets in the way of their work because they just feel like they have to be immediately good at everything that they start. And so I think it's something I'm trying to be really, really mindful of. And I'm trying to just really tell myself, it's not going to come easy.
So Dave wrote something very interesting, which is very right. Is that practice is important, but not as important as practicing correctly. If you train in the wrong technique, you will learn the wrong technique. And that is very true, because I actually, in my tennis, I had this one instructor who I really liked, but he wasn't a good instructor. And then he left, and I got a new instructor, and I got so much better because he's just a better instructor. And this is interesting in business because... how do I put this without sounding very elitist? But we get sometimes people who want to work with us, especially Mark, and I'm okay with that because they can learn so much from working with someone like Mark or myself, probably more than Mark, since he literally wrote, half of these games we're working on. And people come to me and like, oh, this is great. I've done like 2 things, and I want the highest wage there is, the highest rate, and I want to learn from you guys. Let me think about no. It's like if you come to me when you have 10 years experience and 10 books under your belt, and then we'll, give you that rate. It's like you can't have it both ways, and it's not that you have to pay your dues, but it's interesting because like if you're playing, this is the interesting thing. If you're in a hobby, you're expected to like, okay, I will find a pro who will teach me how to do this, and the better pros cost more money. Therefore, they cost more, but hopefully I learn more. And the best pros cost so much that they only accept, you have to audition just to be part of them, like tennis professionals and so forth. Well, in business, it's kind of a similar way, believe it or not, is that if you want to work with some of the best people, and I'm not talking about any industry, I'm not talking about role playing, I'm talking about any, is that either A, you have to have been proven yourself that you can hold in there and you've been doing this for a while, or B, if you want to get in there, you might have to be an intern, or you might have to work for a very reduced rate because you're just not good enough, but you're not going to be able to contribute.
You don't have the experience yet.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to contribute enough to support what you're being paid, plus the additional time that the people who you're working with might have to then correct your work.
Right. Let me try to give a more distinct example for this. So, when we already talked about the fact that I move at hyperspeed, but if I have work from someone who is excellent, I move even faster because I have to go through it. I check certain things, I fix certain things quickly, and then it's done. And so those are people, when I have an assignment, I want to assign someone that I'm setting up to succeed by my standards. So someone who is experienced enough that the task that I'm giving them is something that they can complete. And if it's a hard task, I think that I try to convince Steven to offer more for a hard task because it takes longer, it takes more effort. And if it's an easy task, maybe we don't have to. And we can also hire someone with less experience because it's an easier task. But it needs to be someone who's going to get to that standard where I can go in and I can go twice as fast because of the fact that it's mostly right. But if it isn't, it actually takes me more time to work with their text than it does to write it myself. Because if I can write it myself very fast, and if there are enough things I have to change and I have to check, and I may have to go through the whole document to find that if that mistake has been repeated or propagated somewhere else, fix the connections. I'm not the person who wrote it, so I don't have as much familiarity with it at first, so I have to familiarize myself. I'm trying to preserve their voice to some extent so that it's not like where did my text go? Mark just threw it all away and rewrote it himself.
One, by the way. That's a really big one. That's very hard.
And so it actually takes me more time to do that, even if I don't provide the kind of training and feedback that Stephen is talking about. Training and feedback then take additional time. So it is in my mind, it is crucially important that if you are going to hire someone who is not ready for the task yet, that you have to understand like
that it needs more time input for you as well.
Company has to be willing.
With my very limited experience in the industry, I have had to do that as well and just entirely rewrite some stuff that just because sometimes it's just like easier and faster to just like do it yourself.
It's always easier and faster to do it yourself unless you don't want to do it, and then it's a pain in the ass.
Well, it's faster to have someone who you can trust very much to write it. Because going through something that was done extremely well is faster. For me, it's about twice as fast. For a lot of people, it's more than twice as fast if the person did very well, because a lot of people don't write that quickly but can develop quickly. However, it's very important because it's important for our industry to be able to get in new voices and be able to hire inexperienced people. But in order to do that, essentially your company has to be able and willing to write off the additional time that it will take to hire that person and to provide them feedback and set them for success.
What were you saying, Val? I missed that.
Sorry, and it does have like a really high like barrier of entry, right? I mean, it is like
Oh,
because
very high.
yeah, it's also like let's be honest, like this is not an industry where like you don't go into this industry because you want to make big bucks, right? It's not going to happen. Like TTRPG isn't necessarily where the money is. So it's like every decision that you make in a business, I'm assuming in the industry, is like stuff that you have to really. I mean, having people brought in who don't yet have that experience is a risky maneuver for you, but it is also the way that we get like new voices in the industry. Yes, and it's because there's not that many other places where they are going to get it.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yep.
where do you learn? Where do you get practice otherwise, you know?
Mm-hmm. So what we're talking about, actually, I have a very interesting story that I can give personal experience from. So when I started my company, I was the only programmer. And so my background is in program design and layout. And I would literally run my company from 9 to 6 during the day because I had to spend all day like running my company. And I had like 12, 13 people at the time when I first started out. And then because I was the only coder, I would then code from 6 to 3 in the morning every night. Basically, I would just code. And you think I'm fast at layout, Mark? You haven't seen me code. Like I'm even faster at coding. And I would have to literally finish entire programs in just a few days. I would fly through this stuff. And I coded very, very, very fast. And I did it for a long time. And we were growing, and then but I was killing me. And then my vice president, Tara, sat me down, and she's like, Steve, you got to stop. You got to bring in people. And I know it stinks, but it's better. Yes, you can do it faster than giving it to people, but in the long run, you'll get way more done if you give it to people. And then what I did is, and this went on for years. This wasn't like, oh yeah, I figured this out. This took me a while to figure out. And then I brought in people, and then I told you at NYU and New School and this stuff. So I then used to run classes in my company, and I would actually teach the programmers design, and I would teach the designers coding, so they would better understand how to do websites and CD-ROMs so they can work better together. And the time was much better spent of me actually running these impromptu classes and teaching them. And it took a little bit of time, but in really just a few months, the output was so much higher. And I didn't have to code anymore. And they were doing the work, and I could actually go to sleep before 3 a.m.
Right. Now, it's slightly not parallel, because in this case, once you trained them, you didn't have to do anything on the projects unless it went wrong.
Correct.
Whereas in a tabletop RPG sense, compared to being so small that you just write it yourself versus someone else writes it and you do a development pass, there is some number of your hours that are going to be put into it, no matter what, unless you just publish what the other person wrote without looking at it, which I do not recommend.
Right.
And what I'm saying is, even someone who is trained in the basics, even someone who's actually pretty good at what they do, it's possible that it takes, if you are very, very fast at the writing phase of it, for example, I am, it's possible that it takes me longer to develop their text than it would to write it myself. Even if I didn't do a second of training, because they were already kind of trained on it, it was just like, that's how long it took to handle their text and keep their voice, but still fix the things to fix. Whereas if you get someone who's excellent, then even if you're very fast, you'll pretty much always be able to do it even faster with that. So it's actually very challenging with the websites training. Even after training, I'm sure you would have been faster doing it yourself. But the key was there that you didn't have to do anything once you trained those people.
And you can scale, because then I have 5 people working on it. And as fast as I am, I'm not as fast as 5 people who might be slower than me, because they still have 5 people or 10 people. Unfortunately, I'm still doing the layout for all of our books. I still haven't found a substitute for that, which I really should, except I kind of enjoy it. So I'm not in like the biggest rush to do it because I kind of like doing the layouts. And B, I'm super fast at it. And C, it has our look and feel, which is unfortunately kind of the layouts that I do. They all look similar because I keep doing the layouts, so they all have the same similar look to them. And actually, Ian World said something very fascinating. They hired an art director for the first time ever at Morris's, and they realized, oh, an art director, what they do is they codify everything to make all the books similar and to make everything work across all their lines. And that's something they weren't doing before, which is only funny because I do that, except I keep changing my mind on things. And so I'm like, oh, I like it this way. And then but we takes us a year to do a book, and I'll be like, oh, but a year has gone by. I kind of like it like this. So I slightly change it over time, but I'm okay with it. I don't even know if anyone even notices these things. These are things like only designers might notice, but anyhow.
Designers, editors, writers are the ones who notice some of those minor design changes.
Yeah, we're the only ones who notice that sort of stuff. Most people never even notice it. So, what did you learn, Val? What did we learn today? What was the end?
I learned so much.
Oh.
Do you want the
Yes.
full recap?
Sure, let's see a recap. What do you
Okay.
think was the recap of this?
Okay, wait, because I have two handwritings. One that is insanely pretty, looks like calligraphy,
Ooh.
and then I have one that is so hard to read, I don't even know what I wrote.
All right, chicken scratch.
Yay! Stephen and Mark's commandments to running a successful TTRPG business. First rule, don't overhire.
It's true.
Second rule, the people you hire, bank on expertise. Correcting someone else's work is a lot of time that could have been spent better. 3, it's hard to guarantee what will or will not do well, but you have to do all you can to listen to what's out there and prioritize properly. Then, test the waters with small projects, and later on that can be expanded into something bigger, depending on how well they do, also allowing you to do some passion projects and renew your interest and your fun in the thing. Then niche, so people know why they're coming to you for. Then be careful who you work with and follow proper business practices at all time. Don't mess with the law and the contracts. Hopes and wishes does not work. What I wrote? That was your quote. It was a great quote. Hopes and wishes does not work in business.
There we go.
Get it
was
all in writing.
Yes.
Okay. Passion and excitement is great fuel, but blood, sweat, and tears don't guarantee success and are not sustainable. Balance the excitement with a good sense of responsibility and a head firmly on your shoulders. And finally, value your staff and show it to them. Don't overwork them, because that burnout is not going to help. And their excitement also is what makes your work good quality.
Oh my God, I think, Val, you might have to be on our show every week now.
That's amazing because Steven
That
is
was
full
so
of wisdom
good.
about these things, but he does, as we've seen, he has a rambling storyteller style of things that is really fun for a lot of people to listen to, but can make it hard to get everything down. But Val, your TLDR needs to be, Steven, you need to make that a clip video.
I'm a dot connector. That's
Yeah.
That was really good.
You need to make that a clip video that just people can watch just her reading those notes to get the TLDR of this longer video, because that is, to me, I find that kind of summary highly valuable.
Yeah, that
And
was really,
condensed.
really, really good.
I'm a send that to you.
Oh yeah, do please. I mean, no, that
Amy Z in
that
chat
was
says
really
that we
good.
need Val to do a recap as a recurring thing every
Oh, no.
episode.
Well, that's what I just said too.
I feel bad that I didn't do it last episode, because I feel like there was a lot of really fun stuff in there. I can provide you with the full movie list, though.
Oh really?
Yeah,
That
Steven's
actually
movie list.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be fun.
that would be fun.
Yeah,
So
but
I don't even remember what it
yeah,
was.
notes are cool. Notes
Even-
are great.
Steven
There was a lot of
droning
really good
on
advice
is
in there.
excellent way to fall asleep. Thanks, man. Hey, man, I fall asleep all the time to videos, but
Do you fall asleep to listening to yourself talk on
Sometimes.
video?
sometimes I listen to everything though. I have to. I listen to a lot of stuff. Well, we have story. Well, because I tell stories. That's why I like to.
Yeah.
It's well because I try to use my personal. I just try to use my personal experience, because I also have done. I've done so many freaking things. I don't even know how I've done so many things. It's kind of weird. I have a weird life. That's all I have to say.
You're a weird guy, Steven,
I'm a weird
but
guy.
it makes you very interesting.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. That was very good. That's like, and I'm trying to think. There's more to it, but those are, if you just use that as a basis, you'll get pretty
There was
far.
definitely more to it. There was
Oh, yeah,
definitely
there's
more
way
to it.
more
I
to
only
it.
started taking notes maybe like
No, that's more than enough.
45 minutes in.
And
Yeah.
in fact, if you look at that, that was kind of their downfall. Is like a lot of those. The two biggest ones is they overhired and they didn't follow the law, and like that's like those
They
are.
didn't follow the law, and I feel a big one is also just not necessarily treating their staff with, you know.
Yeah, that's very tricky. Is treating your staff because there's intent, and then there's what you actually do. And I feel like a lot of companies intend to want to do things, but then realistically they might just like they weren't paying. Well, it got really bad. Like Evil Genius wasn't paying people for weeks, if not months. Good news is they made it all back. They actually did pay them, and it was all taken care of, and everyone I think ended up in the end. I don't know to say happy, but they were made whole. But that's how bad it got. It got to the point like. It's not that they didn't want to hire all these people, but they didn't even have enough money to pay them their regular salaries, let alone hire them full time.
And that's not the end of the list of things in terms of treatment. There's also just like the personal
Statements about the personal inexcusable in this
of
day
leadership.
and age. That's inexcusable, and that is also just experience and industry, because I've seen some industries are a lot worse than others. Leave it at that. Some industries where like treating people like crap is par for the course. Unfortunately, entertainment is one where they get away with it, and there's a lot of movies based on that. And technology, believe it or not, technology is pretty brutal. At the highest levels, the technology is because you're working with very, very, very smart people who really know how to hurt you and take advantage of you in very novel and interesting ways because they're very smart. So it's a very tricky industry to be part of. And I find in entertainment, I see, this is just my experience, is that you can find a lot of brutish people that maybe not always the sharpest knives, but they are brutes, and they can take advantage of you that way. But in technology, it's way worse because they're usually very intelligent and they can just do things that really cut deep, and you got to be careful. But it's really not that hard. I hate to break it to you. Treat people nice, and you'd be amazed how well it works. It's sort of like that. I treat you good, right, Mark? I treat you nice, right?
Yeah.
Good. Mark, blink twice if you need help.
Yeah, don't do that.
No, I'm just kidding. No, Steven, I definitely given the fact that there is a parallel and that Evil Geniuses people are all contractors. When this first came out, somebody said to me, they were like, Mark, I know you're a contractor too. I hope everything's okay for you because that's similar. And I was like, completely different situation.
Yes.
Steven does not try to minimize my expertise. He's always talking about how we could never have done this without my expertise, without how fast I am, without how much that I do, and is praising the accomplishments that I'm ever able to put out. He is compensating me well. So that thing with the minimum wage for contractors, that's not even close to being relevant. Instead, being a contractor means that I am taking work with Steven and, I can do other freelance things because if you're a contractor, you actually kind of mostly always can, especially with the new rules in March that they're putting out for contractors. And between all of that, there's a bunch of income that my company makes that is not salary, and that means I'm taxed less on that because of the fact that Social Security and certain other things. So there are factors in the situation that would not apply to the Evil Genius people because they were being paid low enough that they could not do that. that actually make the situation much better for me. And I'm not saying this because I'm being held hostage.
Oh. I've also been doing this for.
If you need help, think
I've been doing this a long time, and when I first approached Mark, I explained to him why I do this, and he understood.
I was very confused by it because at first I was going to lose my benefits, which sounded pretty bad, and it's not good to not have benefits, but some of the other things you can do can help counteract that.
I won't get
and
into
it's obviously better for
Steven. Turn to a very different podcast, but let's put it this way. There's a reason why if you have your own company, you can end up paying little to no taxes, and I'll leave it at that. So which is why being an independent contractor is not a bad thing. And the entire world is starting to, or at least the United States, is waking up to that. And I think I was like 30 or 20 years ahead at the time because now everyone's doing this. And unfortunately, hiring someone full-time in the United States is basically, it costs almost like twice. So if you're hiring someone at $50K, you're basically paying $100K for that person. And they're not getting it.
American thing is like it.
Yeah, they only get $50K. $50K goes to like the government and other things, and then they're taxed on that $50K too. That's on top of that. So like basically you're paying someone for $50,000 salary, the government's getting like 70,000 of that, and other people, and the workers getting very little of that.
Give it very quickly, because obviously this is not the main point, but it is true that this applied to the Evil Genius people. If you are independently employed, if you're a contractor and you're only making enough that it's like an average person in the industry would make, such that you have to pay yourself all of it as salary, then essentially you are going to wind up not only getting no benefits, but also paying double Social Security and Medicare taxes you would have paid as an employee, because normally, like Steven said, the employer was having to pay a bunch of that, half of it themselves, and you would pay both halves because you're the employer and the employee. But if you are a company that, no, this is if you are making a small amount.
Yeah, if
you're a company that's making a higher amount
exactly
of money, which is not the case for the Evil Genius people, but is the case for me, then you only put the amount that is a fair amount for like a person in the industry doing your basic industry job to make as salary. And the rest of what you get from your different contracts is not. And because of that, you pay double as much on the part that is salary, and then you don't pay that kind of tax at all on the other part. And it sort of cancels out and makes it better, but it's really bad if you're making a small amount of money as a contractor where you're paying double on those taxes and have no benefits. And that's the situation. That's why the situation is night and day different between me and the people who were having being, in a bad situation with how Evil Genius.
By the way, one other thing, I think Mark likes this because it's a big game. And Mark likes games. And once he saw it, he's like, ooh, the ultimate game, the game of life. And then he's like, ooh, I can fool around with actual life decisions and fool around and gamify.
I mean, I did that my entire life. Like when I got to MIT, I started researching the requirements and prerequisites of things, just like if it was an RPG.
See? I knew you would like it.
When I was like a new freshman, they put us to a thing where like upperclassmen came to like offer advice to people. And I was there and I was talking to some other freshmen. I was like, here's how you can get through the humanities requirements in a certain way. And this would let you do this like 1 year sooner. And some of the upperclassmen who were here to guide us are like, hold on, go through that again. I'm not done all of my requirements of those. And then they started bringing in more of them so that I could explain how you could get through the prerequisite trees, more of the upperclassmen, which was really funny. But it's the same skill set that allows you to min-max a character, allowed me to be like, yeah, I got my master's in 4 years because I min-maxed my skill tree for which courses counted towards more than one requirement in a certain way.
It's also the same way I was able to get a hotel room at Gen Con. Even though I was at the end of the line. How about that? See, it's all these little secret skills you need to learn.
I need all these secrets. Can I come back with my trusty notebook and hear all those secrets and write them all down?
Sure. You come on whenever you want.
Yeah, we can
Well,
definitely.
I come on during my holidays.
Only during your
Mhm.
holidays. But you have holidays all the time. You're in France. France has
Yeah.
holidays constantly.
We do.
It's great.
We do.
No, I wish I was in Europe. That's the thing. It's like I worked with. I'm working with China now. Is that my first experience working with China is that they're like, oh, we're not working this week because we have a holiday. I'm like, what do you mean you're not working the week? Like the whole week. And then like every couple of weeks, they're like, yeah, we're off today. We're off this week. I'm like, I thought you were a communist country. They're like, yeah, we got like 8 weeks off a year. I'm like, you get 8 weeks off? You're a communist country. I live in America. I get like 1 week off if I'm lucky.
No, I don't see why you're saying being a communist country should mean that they would get fewer weeks off. Like if the company was a country that follows the true
30
principles of communism should be good for the workers. I know, obviously.
Yeah, well, this is back in
obviously most countries that are communist countries did not wind up following those initial principles.
Exactly.
But
I'm thinking this was also 30 years ago when I was still young and I had the concepts of that, Russia, like 80s
30 years ago that was
like
widespread.
80s version of Russia where you would work whatever they told you to work and you'd have to and you never get days off and you got to go wait in line to get bread and stuff like that. That's not what China is like at all. I mean, it's still a repressive government, but they get off so much. It's kind of ridiculous. I had to get my books done. They're like, yeah, make sure you get it to us because we have off like the whole month of February. And if you don't get it to us in the beginning of February, we can't do your books till March. And I'm like, what are you talking? Because it's Lunar New Year. They're like, they just take off like 3 weeks for Lunar New Year. I was like,
it's kind of like in the US, if you try to get something done around the Christmas, New Year's time, where a lot of people just use their vacation days combined with the days they already have off to create a 2-week block. That's exactly what happens in Lunar New Year
You're completely
in
right.
China.
Yes, as I found out, which was interesting because I couldn't get anything done for the last 2 weeks. It was very hard for me because no one's around. But now suddenly everyone's around again, so... But we got Val. When do you go back to work or school? When's your break over?
One more week of holiday, and then I go back to work.
So this week and next week?
This week, right there, and next week, yeah. And then back to work. And then the next one is at the end of April.
End of April.
Well, Steven, you're not going to be here next week because you're like everywhere next week. So we're going to have to catch Val at the end of April then.
Or you can do it without me.
Oh, we can always, if we make it happen like last time where we do something on a Tuesday.
We can do Tuesday. Or you can do a show with Val next week. Mark, you want to do that?
I'd absolutely do one next week. We could pick the topic to be focused on one that you really want to talk about. So we have each other's Discord. We should get in touch and see if we can figure something out for that. I have the streaming ability.
Let me check myself though, because I booked myself so much for that.
Oh yeah. If you've already booked yourself, then let's not.
I can check though, but yeah. It's kind of the thing of like, I don't, when I'm working, I'm working and I'm just telling people, we'll do it when I'm on holiday, and then the holidays happen. I'm like, oh Lord, I've been so busy. I've had only one meal today. Is that what happened?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have my meal after this.
I have my carrots. I have my carrots, but I haven't been eating them because I realized that, carrots is not a good snack when you're on a stream with a mic.
No.
Not great.
You'd have to mute.
Well, it's not that bad. I'm going to be at Gamma next week. I don't know. We'll see. I might do something. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'll have a lot of people with me. Maybe
you could do something from the floor of Gamma like you did when Starfinder 2E was announced, and I did one from here and you did one from Gen Con.
I might do that. Well, I'll bring my stuff because, everyone's going to be at Gamma. I mean, Eric will be there. Maybe he'll do something with me. Who knows? We'll see. Gamma is it's going to be interesting. It's in Louisville this year. It's the first time ever. They used to do it in Reno for a very long time.
Right.
And now it's in Louisville. So next week I'm going from New York to Louisville, then Louisville to Washington, D.C. for a top secret meeting, and then from D.C. to Elon to visit my daughter at her, she goes to university, and then I come back. So in 1 week, I'm doing a lot of traveling. And then we have to prepare for the next Kickstarter, which should be coming out very, very soon.
This is one we've told everybody about, so everybody knows what it is.
Yes, more or less.
Yeah, you don't know all the details, which are very tasty and we'll reveal later, but you know what it is because we've been talking about this for a while.
Yeah, this one is. Well, now I'm trying to do it. It's a lot of work coming out with a new Kickstarter every other month.
Every other week.
Yeah,
there
it
you
feels
go.
like it.
Feels like it.
Feels like it. It's like, yes, we come out with 20 books a year. Sorry, 20 books. 20 books a year. That's easy. 35, 60, 50, 100. No, 35, 40 books a year. And now trying to do like 5 or 6 Kickstarters a year. Which is
so like something you
insane.
can do every week.
What's that?
I'm sorry, your productivity is not what I thought it was.
What we do?
Yeah, you didn't live up to Val's expectations without doing Kickstarter every week.
Well, you can't. You're not allowed. Actually,
I know.
if I could do more, I would. Believe it or not.
Well, not with that attitude, you can.
No, they actually. There's actually rules. I actually had to go through their. I had to.
Going back to the commandments.
Yes.
Hopes and wishes don't work in business.
Well, no, you'd be something called. So you can't have more. You can only do 1 Kickstarter at a time until you've finished 4 Kickstarters. And after you've done 4, you can do 6 at a time simultaneously.
It's a really weird thing. It's kind of bizarre that it goes 1, 1, 1, 1, 6. I feel like it should be maybe like not so fast to let you do 6, but also a little quicker to let you do 2.
Yeah.
Like maybe you could do like 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or something like that. You know, like step it up.
Yeah. So this time I wrote Kickstarter. I do this actually every time, and I make sure I get it pre-approved before I even think about doing it. And backer kit is no problem. I could do 20 backer kits if I wanted to. Backer kit is very easy to work with. I'm trying to decide because this new one, I'm gonna actually want to talk to you quick. Don't leave, Mark. Let's talk.
Okay.
I want to ask
Let's talk after this.
just for 5 minutes. Is that because there's advantages to both, and we just got pre-approved for Kickstarter, so I'm trying to decide which one to go with because there's advantages to both. So
that's fair.
So Val, what movies are you gonna watch before you go?
Murder by Death.
Murder by Death. What else was on the list? Anything else? I gave you a whole bunch.
There's so much on the list.
Oh,
Wait.
really? Okay, I gave you too many. Do Murder by Death. It's a fun, silly,
Murder by Death is the
goofy
first
movie.
one I'm doing for sure.
Do that one. That one's fun. It's very enjoyable. Anything with Truman Capote in. You know who Truman Capote is, right?
Murder by Death, Twilight Zone, the movie, Creep Show, Cat's Eye, Knock Knock, Single White Female, Hard Candy, and 1 Hour Photo. I'm working my way up to Single White Female, which I think is the one you said that is like
that's great,
tough to watch. But I'm going to start with Murder by Death for sure.
No,
I think
the other one, Knock Knock, is very hard to watch. That one's hard.
Knock Knock. Okay, then Knock Knock will be also.
Watch that with friends.
Someone recommended a movie in the chat that I really want to check out now.
Which movie?
Like, because it was a while back, and then we asked a question, and then I will find it. It's in the chat somewhere.
Oh, are you making her watch Highlander? Oh, Professor Dungeon Master. So Professor Dungeon Master, Highlander. Top 10 favorite movies of all time. And you know why? I went to Carnegie Mellon. Carnegie Mellon, the official movie of CMU, Highlander. And it would be on everywhere, every day, all the time. I even have the extended version of Highlander. I signaled the camera to move. I have the extended version of Highlander where he rescues his secretary from a Nazi concentration camp. And it's actually not as good. There's some more information. It's actually better the way it is. And one of the only 2 movies that have soundtracks by Queen, Highlander and Flash Gordon. 2 greatest soundtracks of all time.
Found it. Brazil by Terry Gilliam.
Oh, Brazil? Brazil's okay. It's definitely of its time. It's okay. Hey, Professor, you got anything else? But yeah, have you seen Highlander? Val,
I haven't seen Highlander.
well, that's not. These were specifically kind of
Did I just
heist
did I just
mystery
lose
movies.
all respect from you because I haven't seen Highlander?
Well, Highlander is such a fascinating movie that, well, the sequels are terrible, but it actually made a television show which lasted like 6 years because the concept of Highlander was so good. There's a few things in Highlander. First, it has Christopher Lambert in it, which is, I believe he's French, so you got a Frenchman in the movie who's the lead. Who's playing a Scotsman, by the way. You have Sean Connery in it, who's a Scotsman playing an Egyptian, by the way. You have Clancy Brown in it, one of the best bad guy actors of all time ever, in one of his very first roles. And you have a soundtrack by Queen, and
Right.
it takes place in Manhattan, shot in Manhattan, in the dirty 80s, because there's two types of 80s. There's the clean 80s with like the neon and like the leg warmers and all that. That's like the Olivia Newton-John 80s. But then there's the real 80s, and we call that the dirty 80s. It's actually, believe it or not, a technical term they use in Hollywood because my brother works on these things. And dirty 80s was the transition between the 70s and the 80s, when New York and all these American cities were complete hellholes and absolutely disgusting, and they were starting to clean them up. And it takes place in Manhattan in the dirty 80s, and you just watch and you're like, wow, this looks dangerous. like who used to live in this city? And it's like, yeah, that's kind of what the city looked like back then. It's amazing.
All right, I'm gonna check out Highlander. Then I'm gonna do Murder by Death, and then I'm gonna do Highlander.
Yes.
And then we'll probably see each other before I have time for more.
That makes sense.
Oh, Sean Connery was a Spaniard, but he was actually from Egypt, if you remember. Professor Dungeon Master. That's where he originally, if you remember where it's from. I've seen Highlander like 5,000 times. I'll give you another one.
I'm just gonna have a really hard time seeing Sean Connery and not thinking about Zardoz.
Zardoz. Wow! You just went up, and I don't know if that was possible, Val. You just went up 20 spots in my book. That you know Zard. It's actually Zardoz, but you know Zardoz.
How many spots are in your book?
Zardoz?
It's Zardoz.
Zardoz. Okay.
Zardoz.
Okay.
Not Zardoz, but it's close. You cannot find that movie.
I'm bad at pronunciation,
anywhere. It's impossible to find that movie. That movie is fantastic. It's horrible, which is why it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's Dan Harmon's favorite movie, and he references it all the time.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love Dan Harmon's work.
I love Dan Harmon too.
Especially Community.
I loved everything from Dan Harmon. I've heard every episode of Hero.
Community in full Zardoz gear.
Yes. He was wearing, right. He came in full Zardoz. On Rick and Morty, he has Zardoz callbacks in Rick and Morty all the time. And did you listen? He does Zardoz, and Labyrinth is his other favorite one. Because in Labyrinth, what's his name?
Bowie?
David Bowie.
David Bowie is the Goblin King.
I know a name of a guy.
You beat me. And for Halloween, take a look at what David Bowie's wearing. Type in Labyrinth, Goblin King, David Bowie. He is wearing the most insane outfit.
I have the record.
Val, you are going way up in my book of coolness. You're getting cooler every time.
Technically, it's not my record. It's my dad's.
Your dad's. Well, there you go. Because I'm probably the same age as your dad. So she says, "Yeah." That made me feel good.
Maybe. How old are you?
You don't want to know. I'm probably your dad's probably a little bit older, but not much older than me. But there's the thing with Zardoz. So what he did is he had every single person dress up as the Goblin King for Halloween, like 30 people, and they all went to the same bar, but they all came one at a time. So eventually everyone was dressed as this insane outfit, and there's pictures of it, and it is and he has this huge cod piece on. It is ridiculous. And then for another year they did do Zardoz. Remember Zardoz? They had sideburns dressed as Zardoz in Community.
Yeah.
Yes.
So during the
Highlander was not shot in Manhattan.
Daniel Bean's episode.
So by the way, no. Highlander was shot in Manhattan. Parts of it, like the scene, like when they're driving on the FDR, there's definitely scenes. It's definitely, yes, you're right. It was shot on a London soundstage, but there's all the outdoors. There's a lot of outdoor scenes that were shot in Manhattan, including like the outdoor driving scenes. By the way,
Wait, Zardoz gets mentioned in Waterdeep Dragon Heist?
actually, Matthew. Okay, Matthew, you are correct. You are 100% correct, but it definitely looks and feels the second unit, and it looks and feels enough like New York, and the second unit stuff matches perfectly. So there you go. Search Zardoz Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Really?
I'm doing it.
No, even I don't know that one, and I know everything. I know that one. I can't believe you mentioned that. Is such a deep cut.
Sword.
It's a disguise used by a famous dark elf villain to infiltrate Waterdeep. There
That's
you go.
So funny. Oh, look at him. The picture. Because that's Zardoz. Because I used to, when I was a kid, I'd see Zardoz and I'd see Sean Connery wearing that outfit, and I always think to myself, what the hell is this movie? What is he doing? What is he wearing? It is so strange. Watch makings of that movie. The making of Zardoz is even more insane than the actual movie itself, by the way.
Okay. Watch out, because for that you have to beat Burden of Dreams. So, all right. What is the name of it then? Is it like a specific
making of? Oh, there's I'll send you some links. I watch a lot of YouTube during the day, and a lot of these like how it was made things where they actually go through the production of certain movies.
Gotcha. I thought it was like a making of like movie.
No. These are like internet, but these are good ones. These are people who spend a lot of time and spend way too much time and effort going through like how this was made. Because the person who's the narrator of the movie was, I think he was the writer and director too. And they added that. The studio forced him to add the narrator because no one understood what was going on. So he had to add those scenes later into it. And Sean Connery was like not happy being on this. At first he did it, and then he realized, wow, this movie's a total shit show. And yeah. How about Logan's Run? Have you seen Logan's Run? All right, put that one on the list. Logan's Run. Have you seen Logan's Run, Mark?
I know about Logan's Run, but I've not seen Logan's Run.
Logan's Run is it's actually a shame because it was originally shot as a very R-rated movie, but then they were cut to a PG type movie, and you could see how it was cut, which kind of sucks because it probably is way better as an R movie. It is about a society where you only live to 30 and then you die, and that's the whole society. And Logan's Run is very 70s sci-fi, but it has all this interesting concepts of like your age, and you wear different colors based on your age, and since you're going to die when you're 30 and you have no responsibility, all they do is have fun all day. And you could tell why it was supposed to be an R-rated movie. I'll leave it at that. A PG movie where you're all in your where everyone's 30 or under and has no work and no responsibilities. That should have been a hard R movie, but instead they made it very, very family friendly, which really shouldn't have been. But that's a fun movie. That's a fun, silly, goofy movie. But that one.
Maybe next time I'll bring you some recommendations.
You gotta give me some. I know. I could go on forever. Wow, I didn't know that.
You know what? I'll give you one. I'll give you one of my favorites. I'll give you "See You Up There" by Albert Dupontel. Some French nice stuff.
I've actually seen a lot of French. What movie is that? How do you spell that?
Or type it in. "See You Up There." I believe
"See You Up There." See You Up there. Oh, the French. Oh, actually, no, I don't know that. I used to watch a lot of French movies in college. Oh, a huge amount.
No, this is 2017. It says.
This one is pretty recent. Yeah.
Okay.
So you wouldn't have seen it based on that.
You'd be surprised what I see, Mark.
But yeah, but I'm saying you couldn't have possibly seen.
Not in college.
Even you're a very impressive person in some ways, but even you couldn't have seen a 2017 film when you were in college. That's impossible.
No, not in college. But I used to my wife and I would take a film class
Well, Mark, you were like this close to outing Steven as a time traveler.
Oh, damn it. No.
That
That's not even-
explains how he does so many things.
That does explain. No. I was in a film class, and in this film class, we would watch 3 movies a week. And these were movies I guarantee 90, like no one's heard of any of these movies. It's like we would very, very rarely watch a movie that was mainstream. And if we did, it was like the most mainstream movie.
You did the whole like Holy Mountain and everything.
Well, Monster. Like we saw Monster, if you ever seen that. That's like that was the most mainstream. But what was cool is they always had a producer or actor or director from the movie come and talk after. It was a very high. So and we would see usually 1 or 2 movies in the class. So this is crazy. We'd actually watch a movie, then the actor or someone would come in, then we'd watch another movie, and then someone else would come in, and then on the weekends he'd have bonus movies, and then we'd go see bonus movies on the weekend. And I did that for years and years, basically until he stopped doing it in Manhattan. And we actually did it in NYU's Film Center, and it was gorgeous. And so I have seen. Now it was a little more impressive before the year of Netflix, because now you'll never see everything. But there would be like, say 500 movies that come out that year, and like 300 of them you've never heard of, but we would see those 300 movies. Like those are the movies we'd end up seeing, like the ones you've never heard of. Nowadays it's impossible to see everything because there's like 500 movies come out a day on Netflix and YouTube and stuff. But see you up there. I have it on my list. Au revoir.
It's really nice.
Las Hot. How do you pronounce that stuff?
Au revoir.
Okay. My French is terrible.
Those H's at the beginning are usually silenced.
I
They're
wanted
silent,
to take
yeah.
French.
The T
And-
is silent too. Too much silent.
I wanted to take French, and my parents refused to let me take French because they said I would never pronounce it. I was so excited. I couldn't wait to take
Oh,
the
no.
language. And they forced me to take Spanish, which was the last language I wanted to learn. And I was terrible at it because I had no desire to learn Spanish. I was so excited to learn French. Oh, well.
C'est dommage, Steven.
Oh, well.
C'est dommage. C'est très dommage.
Soylent Green does not hold up. Silent Running is too weird. Rollerball is boring as hell. Logan's Run is of those 4 you mentioned.
Someone talked about Barbarella.
Barbarella is okay. What's interesting about Barbarella is that the name Duran Duran, the pop group, they got it from the movie Barbarella. They literally said, "Yeah, we like the name Duran Duran, so we just took it from Barbarella," because that was the name of the main bad guy. That movie's terrible, by the way, but it has some very good visuals.
It's really fun to watch, though.
It is fun to watch. It is very fun.
And oh wait, I had another one and I forgot.
Intouchables.
It'll come back.
It's not too late to learn French, Steven. You can do it.
I
It's
have no
not too
time.
late to learn French.
I don't need to anymore.
Si tu essaies to
No, you don't need to learn any language
maintenant,
nowadays.
Stefan.
You never need to learn a
And then I
language.
mispronounced
Like
all
music.
that, but it was probably
No, it's all
incomprehensible.
right. I mean, you know the words in the grammar. It's a hard language. Oh, Intouchables. I haven't seen that one in a while. I've seen there's a US version.
there is
to
I was going to
Intouchables. It's
say
called The Upside.
there is I was about to say that there is a U.S. version of this movie. I know yes, I know exactly which one because it had was it Walter White, the guy who played it. Yeah, he was in this. Yeah,
Wait,
these type of movies.
it was?
Yeah, there's like a U.S.
Oh,
version.
you're
of this
right.
movie.
It was.
I'll tell you something else. All right, everyone, and then we'll end this stream. Enemy Mine, very interesting movie. Does not hold up as well, but it's worth seeing like once or twice. True Lies, the Arnold Schwarzenegger Cameron movie, based off a French movie. Believe it or not.
Which French movie?
It is not original, and the French movie might be better in some ways. Hold on, I'll tell you what it is.
Wait, is this the recommendation or is it saying
Both.
do not watch this?
No.
It's not
Oh,
worth
True
it?
Lies is fantastic. True Lies is
All
one
right.
of
Okay.
my favorite adventure.
Oh, it's the French
excellent.
version that sucked. Gotcha.
Oh no, they're both good. That's one of the rare cases where the French version is good and the American. They're both excellent. True Lies French.
Oh God, I'm forgetting how to write
version.
Schwarzenegger.
It's called it's called La Total. The Total. It's it's from 1991 French spy comedy film, and then it was turned into it was redone as True Lies in 1994. It's that's actually, they're both very, very good. So there you go. You can watch them both. See, and you can see it in French.
Yeah.
True Lies, by the way. Oh, that is such a good movie. That movie is.
I will start with Murder by Death.
Murder by Death. There's a scene where there's a chase scene through a hotel where Arnold Schwarzenegger is on horseback.
I've actually seen True Lies. It's like the only movie.
Someone is spelling it for me. Thank you, Dave.
It's
the only movie Steven has mentioned on here. Like this entire day that I've seen.
5,000 movies. And you're like, oh, that's the only one I've seen.
I've seen True Lies. I saw it. I think it may have come out later than some of the other ones that you said.
Death Race 2000, not great. That one's Sylvester Stallone's
True Lies is 1994,
right?
So it was in the 90s. So therefore, I was more likely to have been able to see it.
Yes, Death Race 2000. That's a Roger Corman movie. Anything by Corman's pretty interesting. I'll do another whole diatribe one day because James Cameron got started with Corman, and all of the things that you see in Aliens was actually done in an earlier movie that Cameron did with James Cameron. James Cameron did a movie with earlier that was like $1 million piece of crap, but he reused all the technology from that movie and put it into Aliens. So that's another story. I'll get into that. And we actually talked about that when we had who did we have on? When we had
I don't remember who the guest was, but I do remember that you talked about it.
It was from Red Letter Media, Jack Packer.
Oh yeah, Jack.
When Jack was on,
that makes sense. You talked about movies with him so much that
well, he reviews movies for a living.
Yes, of course.
So I could talk to him about movies. All right, this is going on way too long. I gotta go. Mark and Steve dinner. I have to go feed my dogs.
And you said that we need to talk after this about Kickstarter versus backer kit, right?
Real quick, 5 minutes. All right, Val. I know it's late there. It's almost midnight there for you, right?
Yeah, it's
Thanks for sticking
3 minutes to midnight.
3 minutes to midnight.
I'm going to go eat something.
Oh, okay. You go eat
and
something.
then pass out.
All right. Have fun passing out. And let us know if you can do next Wednesday with Mark.
Yeah. I will try and also find a way to get some rest during my vacation. But this is fun, to be honest. So
you wanted to know what we do? You wanted us to know how to do what we do? That doesn't happen. There's no such thing as rest.
No rest?
No, never.
I get rest.
Oh.
Steven doesn't get any. I get some rest.
I'm bored if I'm resting. If I'm resting, I'm not doing something. Not being
Steven's a shark.
productive.
If he stops, you never know what's going to happen.
I'll die.
See, I try to get rest, and I end up not. I'm one of these people who just really struggles to figure out how to rest. So I always end up doing something, but it's going to be something that isn't necessarily work. I guess I'm going to learn how to draw, or I guess I'm going to learn map making or something. I don't know how to just
do nothing. I know exactly what you're talking about. Actually, Mark, I'll type to you what I need because I got to go do something. So I'll talk.
Okay.
I'll tell you everything over text.
Fair enough.
All right. Say the thing, Mark.
All right. Well, until next time, if you want to battle the zoo, you have to roll for combat.
Bye.